But. Oh, yeah, and that's what I do.
You sound like you're
Real major.
unstruck boxer.
Exactly.
All right,
And there's no,
start.
oh, yeah.
We got started. We are ready to start. Mr.
I
Travellini,
remember when he was
Here.
unclear at the.
Mr. Giannini,
Here.
Mr. Leonard,
Here.
Mr. Rodelius,
Present.
Mr. Walter,
Here.
Mr. First, Ms. Christie,
Here,
Chairwoman Gutschall.
here.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Bedminster Township Land Use Board was filed with the Township Clerk, sent to the Bernardsville News and the Courier News and to all subscribers, and posted at the Township Municipal Building, 1 Miller Lane, Bedminster, New Jersey, on January 12th, 2024.
Please stand. Flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will open it up to the public for anyone who has something that they'd like to discuss that's not on the agenda. Seeing anybody? You see?
Well, it looks like we have a couple of people online, but I
Okay,
their phone numbers not named, so I don't know exactly who.
okay.
So if you are interested in speaking, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself. You can, it says raise your hand, or if you're on your phone, you can press *9. Anyone in the public interested in speaking?
Seeing no one, we'll close it to the public. Okay, we have minutes from January 11th. A reorg meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
Jane,
I'm abstaining too.
you abstain? Yeah. Okay, minutes are approved. We have a letter, postponing 22,000, Route 206 for a change
Again.
again. We have official notice of intention to approve a preliminary state development and redevelopment plan. I believe, if anyone's, they're invited if they want to go. Has anyone, stepped up? No?
No, I mean, but they don't have to let me know, they can just,
They can show
I just
up.
wanted to
Yeah, okay.
inform everybody that it was something you were invited to.
Yep, okay. We have some determination of completeness, Paul.
Madam Chairman, the Melissa application is for a use variance along Somerville Road. There's been a number of documentation submitted in response to my original incompleteness letter. Based on the information provided, it's my opinion that the waivers are appropriate and the application can be deemed complete and scheduled for.
All right, we need to approve that.
Yes, so the board is interested, that's a motion to waive the remaining items for completeness and to deem the application complete. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Okay,
Mr. Travellini,
Aye.
Mr. DiGiovanni,
Aye.
Mr. Leonard,
Aye.
Mr. Rodelius.
Aye.
Mr. Walter.
Aye.
Mr. First,
Aye.
Ms. Christie,
aye.
Chairwoman Gutschall.
Aye. Motion is approved.
And they are actually scheduled for next week.
Okay.
We were hoping on.
Okay, well, moving right along. Okay. And we have another one here, Penisic.
The Penisic is a deck variance request to see variance. Again, the application has been submitted. There are some waivers that are outlined in my review letter. I think they're appropriate given the nature and scope of the application. It's recommended that it be.
Okay. Need a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
I'm sorry, who was first, Rich?
Yes.
Rich, and second was?
George.
Thank you. Mr. Travellini,
Aye.
Mr. Giovanni,
Aye.
Mr. Leonard.
Aye.
Mr. Redias,
Aye.
Mr. Walter,
Aye.
Mr. Hurst,
Aye.
Ms. Christie,
Aye.
Chairwoman Gotcha.
Aye. Motion is approved. And that can also go next week, or?
No, they were not in time to notice.
Oh, okay.
So I've given them the March dates and told them
March.
to let me know what's going
Okay.
to work best for them.
Oh, you know. All right, do we want to talk about the old business here, Paul?
The only thing I will tell you is that I'm still going back and forth with Larry on some language. And I have to do a last minute tweak on some of the numbers just to make sure everything is consistent between the various documents.
Okay,
But once I get the information from Larry, we should be good to go and forward it off to the governing body.
then I think we're ready for 2475 Lamington Road. No, go right ahead, sorry.
Good evening, Michael
Hi.
Osterman, appearing
Hi.
on behalf of the applicant, 2475 Lamington Road, Bedminster LLC. The applicant is the owner of the subject property, identified as block 27, lots 21 and 22, and located at obviously 2475 Lamington Road. The property comprises slightly more than half an acre in total and slightly more than 4/10 of an acre of takeout road right away that's existing and proposed. The property the applicant acquired the property in August of 2022. The property and the building have been vacant since 2007, about 17 years. As a result, the condition of the property has been described by Mr. Banish as blighted. The applicant's intention in buying this property was to clean it up and restore it. He's hired architects, engineers, a planner to develop a plan for this property. Initially, he's been focused on the building and its use. The building on this site was originally a house. Actually, let me back up and say that the property comprises 2 lots. And there were originally 2 houses on the site, one on each lot. But one of those houses was removed a while ago. From the 1960s to the 1980s, the building on this property was used as a bank branch with a drive-through window. In 1990, a certificate of occupancy was obtained to allow the building to be used as a stationery store known as Paparazzi. In 1996, the planning board approval was granted to allow the building and the site to be used for 3 uses. A stationery and paper store on the first floor, Paparazzi, a catering kitchen also on the first floor that was to be used for off-premises catering. And that business was known as Grill Master. And finally, the second floor of the building was approved to be used for children's themed birthday parties and party planning. By 2007, the building was vacant. Since buying the property in 2022, the applicant has tried to find a permitted commercial use to occupy the building, but he's been unable to do so. And you'll hear more from him about that. You'll also hear that there has been substantial demand for residential occupancy on this property. So the applicant is proposing to clean up and restore this building and property and eliminate the blighted conditions and make this site attractive as part of the Bedminster Village area. He's proposing 2 separate residential tenant spaces, one on each floor of the building. A 2-bedroom apartment on the second floor and a 2-bedroom apartment on the first floor. To that end, the applicant is seeking use variance. while the ordinance allows a residential apartment as part of a mixed use, it does not allow two apartments. If this application is approved, the applicant intends to do a number of things to the property. First, make improvements to the exterior of the building in accordance with the architecture plan and the rendering that have been submitted. Fixed the broken porch rail, replace the lighting fixtures to comply with the ordinance and to comply with Mr. Ferraro's report. Eliminate excess impervious coverage and parking as suggested by Mr. Ferraro and Mr. Banish, which will eliminate a non-conforming condition. And finally, landscape and clean up the property. All of this, we think, will greatly improve the appearance of this property and and eliminate the non-conforming condition that currently exists with respect to impervious coverage. The way I would like to proceed this evening is to call the following witnesses. First, Mr. Richard Van Orden, who's a member of the LLC that is the applicant. Mr. Paul Fox, the applicant's engineer. Mr. Joseph Marchese, the applicant's architect. And lastly, Mr. Peter Steck, the applicant's planner. If I may, I'd like to begin with Mr. Van Orden.
Okay,
Okay, Mr. Van Orden, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And please state your name and address and spell your last name.
Richard Van Orden, it's capital V-A-N, capital O-R-D-E-N. I currently reside at 1610 US Highway 206 in Bedminster. And I'm a member of the LLC 2475 Lamington Road, Bedminster LLC.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
When did the applicant acquire the subject property?
We closed on the property in August of 2022, August 23rd.
And what was your initial plan for this property?
We looked at the property for approximately 3 or 4 months and kind of fell in love with it. It's a great character for downtown. Our intention was to pretty it up and restore it so it looked more like its original, use. And that's why we decided to buy the property.
Did you contemplate one use initially, or did you contemplate mixed use?
Originally, we were looking at 2 uses because when we looked at the property, we had two separate entrances and 2 separate units in the building. So that's what we thought that the approved use was.
Okay. And have you tried to find a commercial tenant for this building? And if so, what happened?
Yeah, we closed in August and initially started advertising for commercial use of the entire building. By October, after only having 2 inquiries, we decided that to explore using the upstairs as an apartment, which we understood was approved for residential. And we obtained our CO for residential occupancy in March of 2023. We continue to advertise for commercial use downstairs, but realized by March that we weren't getting any inquiries. In the meantime, because we advertised for upstairs being residential, we had about 28 applicants for one 2-bedroom unit.
With regard to the commercial inquiries that you had, whatever came of those?
We had the taco place in downtown Bernardsville who was looking to expand his business in Bedminster. He was interested in the drive-through for morning pickup. He caters tacos and Latin food, Spanish type of quick meals for the laborers. And he felt that a drive-through would be convenient, and we doubted being able to use that, and he never came back to us. We also had a lady who was interested in starting a breakfast luncheon at type of place, but that she never followed through.
Did you have any other inquiries?
No.
And were there any applications?
No.
There was no application for commercial use at all. There was just two people that came to look at it.
Okay, so you indicated you put a tenant, secured a tenant, residential tenant for the second floor?
We did.
Um, Did you obtain, and you said you would obtain a certificate of occupancy, is that correct?
Correct, on March 8th.
Okay.
2023.
So if this application is approved, what is your plan for the property?
Our intention is to pretty the unit up and make it more presentable for the downtown.
And how are you gonna do that?
You know, nice landscaping, bushes and floral you know, improvements. Cleaning the exterior, eventually residing the property. Painting, restoring the original porch, woodwork, things like that. We're also going to be adding residential facilities such as outdoor picnic area, covered eating area for the tenants.
Where will that be?
We intend to convert the old drive-through to a covered pavilion where the tenants would be able to have you know, recreational activities for
Like what?
living. You know, picnics, parties, you know, things like that.
Proposing a picnic table or?
Right, picnic table underneath, yeah.
What's the surface of that area gonna be?
It's currently asphalt.
Are you
So,
proposing anything on top of it?
what we're gonna do is once we cut back the asphalt that exists to comply with the engineer's design, we'll look at what needs to be repaired. Our preference is to do a similar stone type of covering. You know, it all depends on a number of factors, but that's our intention.
What are you gonna do with respect to the lighting?
Well, our original plan, I think, called for too bright of a light, so we're going to cut back the lighting plan to accommodate the requirements of the town.
Are you gonna be modifying the location of lights, given that the parking areas in the back are gonna be eliminated and?
Yeah,
Right, so
we
they're gonna
added,
change?
we added lighting to accommodate that, correct?
Has the lighting plan, the final lighting plan been prepared yet?
I believe we were in compliance with what Mr. Ferrara had asked us to comply with, but I don't think we're ready to present it because of the final plan has to be put together.
Right, good. And are you planning any changes with respect to the impervious coverage?
We're going to reduce the current impervious coverage so that we're in compliance.
And obviously, Mr. Fox will talk about that.
Mhm.
Now, one of your neighbors on Lamington Road is the Delicious Heights Restaurant, is that correct?
Correct.
Have you spoken to anyone from Delicious Heights about this application? And if so, what was the nature of your conversation?
I have of the 28 applicants.
I don't think you can, we don't follow the strict rules of evidence, but this sounds like hearsay. So I'd rather we didn't go into hearsay through this witness.
Okay.
There's ways to do it, but it's not through this witness.
Okay, that's fine. I have no further questions for this purpose.
Board?
A few questions. Mr. Osterman, Mr. Van Orden received a certificate of occupancy. Is this property currently approved for residential use? And what department gave that occupancy, that CO? Because my understanding is it's been previously approved for commercial use. So why would a residential use be, you know, allowed with a CO? I want to understand that whole process a little bit better.
Okay, I was not directly involved in that. Maybe Mr. Van Orden can answer what was involved in getting the CO.
Well, I also understand that the code does allow for detached residential units. So, when we inquired about the use of the upstairs apartment, we were told that it is allowed for residential use. single family residential use, and we asked if we could get the CO to move in a tenant upstairs. And we were told that it doesn't matter if we use half of the building, a quarter of the building, as long as there's only one residential use.
If I can just weigh in here, because I've been
Please.
involved in this for
Please.
quite some time, I think frankly, the direction was very clear from the zoning officer. A single family residential use is permitted. If you have a residential use on the second floor and a vacant first floor, that's not a single family residential use. No zoning permit was ever issued for this use. Okay, you got a CO, but you never got a zoning permit.
Is anything on the first floor now or is it empty?
It's empty.
And the tenant lives upstairs?
Correct.
They're there,
Correct.
and the building is adequate for
Mm-hmm.
a tenant? According to
I see what permits were obtained to separate the utilities from the upstairs and downstairs. They were issued there was a new construction official at the time. Those zoning permits were identified or applied for, and the CO was issued. And again, no zoning permit was issued for the modifications to the building, and no zoning permit was issued before the CO. Because I was involved in the conversation with the zoning officer, we're very clear, and she's on the Zoom and could answer herself as well, but she gave very clear direction that a single family residential use is one of the permitted uses in the zone. And a single family residential use is the use of the building.
Mhm.
And mixed uses are permitted, residential upstairs and commercial downstairs, but there's been no site plan approval that would allow that mixed use.
So currently, Paul, is there a CO for residential use that's legitimate?
There is a CO without a zoning permit. Whether that's legitimate or not, that's not for me to decide. I'm just telling you that that's what exists for the property.
So that's really the purpose we're here, is to rezone the property.
Well, the purpose here is a use variance to put two residential uses in the building.
Right, two residential use. So I think we heard the testimony was that the intention was to try to at least lease the first floor for residential, for retail purposes. Was in any of those iterations that you described at the onset, Mr. Osterman, did you describe a situation where there was retail tenancy on the first floor and residential tenants upstairs?
Mr. Van Orden can answer that better than I.
I'm talking about before he even bought it,
Yeah.
in those various iterations that you described.
Before he bought it, I don't think anything happened before he bought it, but after he bought it, he advertised for a residential tenant, and I believe he testified that he tried to lease the property, the entire property, to a residential tenant. I mean, sorry, to a commercial tenant, or he would have accepted a mixed use, in other words, a commercial tenant just on the first floor. He couldn't find any commercial tenants for either the whole building or even half the building.
That's correct.
And you mentioned that you advertised that,
We did.
and did you hire a broker to help you do that?
The broker who we bought the building from was our agent who just tried to secure commercial tenants.
And so do you know where they advertised it, or how long it was
Well,
on the market?
At that time, he was with Keller Williams.
So I mean, did they advertise in the newspaper? Did they advertise online? Do you have any ideas where they advertised the?
I
No,
mean,
okay.
I don't recall any newspaper advertising, but he listed the property.
And you had a couple of
We did have a
Potential
couple people come
commercial
in,
tenants.
yes,
expressed interest.
correct.
So nobody, can I ask Frank, the pictures that are on your report, Frank, are they recent pictures?
Yes.
I mean, the place looks pretty banged up.
We haven't done any work because we didn't know if we were gonna be commercial or residential.
I mean,
So
when you
we-
bought it, you've had it for a year and a half. I mean, if I was a prospective renter or even commercial use, I'd drive by and say he's out of his mind. And I'm not to be mean or anything, but it's pretty bad.
Well, we did clean up the exterior.
I mean, I see a shutter hanging off, I see the back, I
Well,
see.
the shutter is actually historical hinges, and we haven't taken the shutters down.
Yeah.
Cleaned them and put them back up. When we met with the historical commission, we did not seek permission to remove the shutters. The shutters were left off the rendering by mistake.
Is that a plywood covering one of the rear windows?
That was existing when we bought it.
So in a year and a half, I
What's the
mean, if you had
difference?
people come
We-
and look
we
at
haven't-
it, commercial,
Well,
that you didn't think that might be something.
the
that
inside
makes
is sheetrocked over it, but the previous owner who closed up the window, left the plywood there. I believe the Nervines were intending to fix the facade outside when they were applying for use as a bakery. And the bakery went out of business.
I mean, if someone comes in looking for relief or saying, listen, I need help, I can't. I just wonder how much effort they put into it to try to get, try to avoid asking for relief. And I'm just wondering, with the place looking as bad as it is are you incentivized to make it look so bad that you can't find a tenant and then come in asking for relief? I wonder about that.
In March of 2023, the zoning officer asked us to stop renovation until we move forward with the change of use plan. We applied for the permit to convert from oil to gas. We needed a permit for the entire building to have the gas meter installed.
Okay.
We had to have 2 gas meters installed. We needed a permit to do that. They would not install 1 gas meter. We got a permit for 2 furnaces to separate the old boiler that was there. And we installed the one for upstairs so that we could get the certificate of occupancy for the tenant to move in. And then she told us to stop. It's sat there since then. So we've done no work since March of 2023 because of that reasoning.
So you needed to get 2 gas meters because your intention was to have two uses in there, I assume, an upstairs and a downstairs.
Well, again, when we purchased it, we thought it was 2 uses because it was 2 separate entrances that were not connected interiorly.
It was 2 uses, but it wasn't 2 residential uses.
Well, like I said, I have an email from the zoning officer that says that it's allowed for residential use. We don't care if half of the building, quarter of the building, or whatever is used. So she allowed us to occupy it with a tenant upstairs.
But
I have to step in because we're gonna ask Susanna to bring it on the record, but she never approved residential on the second floor and commercial and vacant on the first floor. I know that. I've been in that conversation 100 times. I've seen the email where you were told a single family residential use is permitted, but that's for the building. That's not up, just because you have a unit upstairs doesn't mean it's a single family residence. And the fact that if you were going to have a residence upstairs and commercial downstairs, that requires a site plan approval, which was never obtained.
Is she on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Susanna's in?
Would this be?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm here.
Susanna, let me swear you in to, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
And Susanna, please state your name, spell your last name, and just explain your position at Bedminster Township.
Sure. So my name is Susanna Karas. Last name is Karas. I am the Bedminster zoning official.
Susanna, maybe just describe anything that you'd like to add to what Mr. Ferrero said.
So the situation, I think, did get misinterpreted. I did speak with Mr. Van Orten, emphasizing that if it was 2 uses, it would require site plan approval. His intent was a single family use, which is permitted in the zone. I think the main issue that became significant is when a construction permit was issued to separate it into 2 separate units, with him knowing that that would require board approval.
Thank you. Anybody want to ask Susanna questions? Susanna questions?
Anything more on the board?
Susanna, did he come in knowing that he was gonna have to get approval, or did he not know that at that point? And was he informed that he had to get site plan approval?
So, I mean, I spoke, unless it wasn't clear, but we went through the ordinance of permitted uses. We spoke on the phone, we spoke through email. The prior use, which was commercial, obviously would be able to continue as that, but what he was looking to do would require board approval. I thought it was clear. I don't know if, I pretty much told him that it would have to go through board approval. So I don't know why a permit was issued for building, with him knowing that. To separate even the utilities, that does change the use of the building. So that is when zoning stepped in to let him know that the building cannot be occupied. It has to go through board approval. That doesn't mean that maintenance should have stopped in any way. It means the use of the interior should have stopped. We do
And-
have a court hearing next week to address the fact that it is still being occupied. It was not supposed to be occupied with residential. I drove by, it's still occupied. There's lights on at night. Someone is living there. So I don't know why there's not a good line of communication. The ordinance is online. It's very clear.
Wait, there's a court hearing, you said?
No, she said the ordinance is on.
No,
No.
there's a court hearing next.
Yeah, she did. What is that for?
That means there's a summons and complaint for being
Oh,
occupied, right, Mr. Van Orden?
I'm sorry.
Have the
There's a
utility,
summons and complaint against you in your municipal court for occupancy, is that correct?
That's correct.
I just
Was there an
asked you,
appeal of that? Was there any appeal of that to this board? The answer is no, right?
There was any, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Was there an A appeal of that summons and complaint to this board?
There was no decision made on that summons.
No, but you would appeal
You
the
have a
summons.
right- You had a right to appeal within 20 days of the issuance of that order. Was an appeal under section A made to this board of that order?
No, there wasn't.
So just say no,
I-
yes, you don't have to elaborate. It's important to know what we're here for. And
Well,
the
I
answer-
received the notice
The
to
answer
appear
is we're
in
here for
court,
a D variance, so
but
you don't have
sir,
to elaborate, sir.
sir, may I explain?
No, I asked you a simple question.
Yeah, but it's
There is
it's a
no
little bit
appeal.
more convoluted than that.
That doesn't. it's
The
not more
convolution
convoluted
is
than that.
I went to court.
It's as simple as
The
A.
court did
appeal
not
or
have me on the
There's
calendar.
no A appeal, sir. You don't even have an issue about an A appeal. It's been lost, forever lost. You did not bring an A appeal. You're in municipal court and you're here. You're here seeking a D variance for 2 apartments in a zone that does not allow 2 apartments. That's what we're here for. The applicant should please go ahead and present that testimony in that case, period.
Tom, excuse me, I didn't follow this totally. So there was a complaint filed on a zoning violation in municipal court. And what was the disposition of that complaint?
The hearing is next week.
What?
It's next week.
The hearing is next week.
Oh, it hasn't been heard yet.
Correct.
Has a plea been entered?
Plea for not guilty.
Thank you.
The prosecutor said that he wanted to dismiss the case because Mrs. Karras did not show up for the pre-conference meeting. He said he could not dismiss it. He didn't understand the complaint and he postponed it, awaiting to hear what happens at this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just like to add that I spoke with Mr. Hewitt, the prosecutor. Court is scheduled for next Thursday. I will be there. It will be a trial, depending on the outcome of obviously what happens here tonight.
Yeah, I would just like to say, or a question to Mr. Osserman that, I originally brought it up because when I heard the CO, and I obviously, I just knew something wasn't fitting. And it appears that things didn't fit. And for Mr. Van Orden, it's just so important that, especially in a residential situation, that all the township departments review that. Because if there's ever a problem, an injury, a fire, or anything like that, everyone's going to be responsible for it. And we need to make sure that, especially in a residential situation, that all of those are followed, all those regs, whatever, follow. And I just want to kind of clarify why I brought it up in the beginning.
So I have a question. Are you in the real estate business somewhat?
I am.
Okay, so did you make any effort to go before you closed and find out the exact situation of this property?
Yeah, I had numerous email conversations with the zoning officer. Now, you were also in the midst of a lot of changes. You had no building inspector.
No, I'm just asking, you knew the status of that property. Did you know it? Because you said earlier that, well, there were two entrances and I thought it was two units.
Correct. And I asked if residential was allowed. And we looked at the resolution, which allowed two uses. So we thought that was two units.
But that's the point I'm getting to. You had every opportunity to know exactly the status of that property before you bought it. But you didn't.
Well, we looked at the resolution. It says two uses.
But you,
But if it doesn't say anything about residential uses.
but you had the opportunity to know exactly what you were getting into. I mean, I buy property. A lot of people buy property. If you have any question, before you go to the closing, you're at whoever's desk can give you that answer. And I think you seem like a pretty smart guy. I mean, and you know the history of the property there. I mean, you know what you were getting into. I would think.
I'm still trying to understand something about the previous uses that you described. There's only ever been one tenant at a time there historically? Or was there ever two tenants? There were two tenants at one point or another? And both, there was two tenants, they were both retail tenants.
Yes. Yes.
You said there were three tenants.
There were three uses, but two tenants.
Oh, two tenants, three uses. Okay.
All right, so the separate entrance explanation goes to the fact that there were two separate tenants at some point,
Yeah.
right? And even though there was a single utility, that single utility might have been sub-metered or otherwise incorporated into the rents about how utilities got paid, right? But there were two
There are
entrances.
two electrical meters, and both electrical meters were in two different companies' names.
Okay, but there were two, but again, there were two tenants and they were always the same use, retail.
As far as I understand, they were both retail.
Okay.
Not quite retail, but commercial.
Commercial, okay.
Commercial uses, okay. So at no point in the history of this property did a residential use occupy the building at the same time there was a commercial use.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So today, we're not just, and I think it's understood, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul or Frank. Today, if he wanted to use the building 100% for retail, he could do that. There's no variance required. That's a permitted use in the zone. He's good with that. He continued to have two retail uses on the property.
Be a mixture of a residential use and a commercial use.
But he cannot have two residential uses there. But that's what he's seeking,
He's seeking a use variance for that,
for that second use.
right? If he were to have an accessory, an apartment and retail, he needs site plan approval from this board as a planning board, which he did not pursue,
Well,
and which he proceeded to do apparently without getting site plan approval from any board. And he doesn't have a zoning permit to have the current apartment.
well, I know that's the problematic
Those are
part.
the facts that we.
That's the problematic part, yeah.
Now, are there two gas meters now? Or not?
There are.
There are. Okay. So that's.
And that's fine if he wants to continue to use it for two commercial uses.
Or.
I'd like to ask a sacrilegious question. Frank, what's the best use of this property?
Well, I think you're asking the wrong guy.
No, I'm not. I'm asking the right guy. If I ask anybody else, I know what the answer, if I ask the applicant, I know what the answer. I mean, the property's
Why
there.
don't we hear the four witnesses of this applicant, who is only here, by the way, seeking a D variance for two apartments. All of this other stuff is almost irrelevant.
But even if we,
Listen to me, please.
yeah,
Tabula rasa, remember, blank slate. even though they might have done something wrong, we don't treat them worse because they did something wrong. But we also don't treat them better because they did something wrong. Or because they advanced some construction, or they spent some money on gas, or they mistakenly understood something. They have to prove to you a use variance for 2 apartments in a zone that only allows 1. If you have a mixed use building, this is not that, this is not what their proposal is. If they're denied, they probably can continue for site plan approval, 1 apartment upstairs and retail downstairs. And from my memory of this site, the bakery approved, they might have to get some sort of concession to keep the drive through, which was for a bank, but which might not be allowed anymore if it's a different retail business, because we'd only allow drive-through for banks, and we might have allowed it for a bakery.
So so to paraphrase you, so if we singular, if
Which
we,
was approved by the.
if we
bakery
focus on
site.
the application for the variance that he's seeking, and we were
Right,
disposed one way or another on that,
right.
let's say for a second, we approved it for a minute, okay?
Why don't we just?
And then he
go
goes
over-
next week, to court, and the judge says he's in violation. Does that void our,
If he has a use
our
variance-
decision?
If he has a use variance approval, he would probably get his case dismissed. If he does not have a use variance approval, judge will probably say, wait till this case is over. But that's, none of this matters, because we, again, tabula rasa. He gets no benefit by having done anything wrong. He gets no harm by having done something wrong.
So
We're here for a blank.
the issue
slate.
that Paul raises and Susanna's is here to talk about has really no bearing on our evaluation.
He thinks
tonight.
it does.
But
The applicant thinks it does. But that's why I asked him, did you appeal the denial of the zoning permit? The
Okay.
answer was no. We are not here on an appeal.
all right, so we're here to
All of
focus on the
that-
merits of this application
That's right.
singularly.
We haven't heard a single witness who can testify as to the special reasons yet, and that's Peter Steck, who's last.
Okay.
So it's not, we're not gonna turn to Frank, we're gonna turn to their 4 witnesses. We're gonna hear this case ad infinitum, I guess, because 4 witnesses about the same subject is gonna end up with Peter Steck telling us why the special reasons are.
Mhm.
I'm waiting with bated breath.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks for that, Thomas.
Okay,
Me too.
is everybody clear now on the board as to where we're going? Okay,
Madam Chair, I just had a couple of questions to clear up some of the testimony.
okay, be good.
One of the comments Mr. Osterman made in his opening statement was that the drive-through area was going to be removed. And you said it's going to be retained as a picnic area. Which one is it?
I didn't say it was gonna be removed, it's going to be converted to
Maybe I misheard you. Okay. So it's gonna, that extension on the building is going to remain. Okay.
Remove, just for the sake of, remove is what I was meaning when I said return to a residential condition. I was not assuming that the drive-through appearance of the building would remain. I assumed that that would be gone and would look like a residential building. Just.
Mr. Benoit?
Can it-
Describe what it's gonna look like. It's gonna
Okay.
look-
Well, we can ask the architect about whether it's a portico or whatever the heck it is, right?
A carport?
I also want to correct something about the historical preservation, regarding those shutters and the fact that one shutter is hanging. I don't think I know the Historic Preservation Committee did not discuss shutter hinges at all. So I mean, I don't, you testified that the Historic Committee, you didn't want to fix the shutter because of something the Historic Committee might have said to you. I'm on the Historic Committee. We never discussed the hinges of the shutters. We did discuss
No,
the shutters, but not the hinges.
Right, but the entire window needs to be refinished to put the correct hinge on. So I'm sorry if I misspoke, but that's what I meant. So we didn't do any of that work yet.
So the shutter.
But our plan is to,
The shutter could not have been
it,
put in place?
I
I'm understanding. why the
believe we
shutter-
took the hinge off and did not put it back on because there's no place to mount that hinge. So.
So it can look like this for this length of time.
We have to side the window and trim the window to put the shutter in properly, correct?
And we did give you permission for the siding and the colors. It was all discussed.
You gave us permission to clean up and repaint, yes.
Yes,
But we were told in March, right after we got the permission, when the spring weather started to break, we were told to stop work.
the shutter and the.
I think the stop work, we the interior of the building, but we won't go there because
Okay.
that's not the discussion tonight.
Okay.
But relative to tonight's discussion, you talked about beautifying the site, which obviously I'm sure Mr. Steck will talk about. That's one of the benefits of the application. You talked about landscaping and bushes. Have you submitted any plan for that?
We have a presentation on what we're submitting yet.
But you have not yet presented to the board. Nobody's seen that yet.
The variance has been revised since we've gotten the reports from Mr. Ferraro and Mr. Banish, which we just got last week. And Mr. Fox is going to present a revised variance plan tonight, as I said.
And that includes a landscape plan.
I'm not sure.
Okay, we will see that. I just, because the reason why I think it's important is if there's gonna be some representation, there's gonna be some landscaping out there, we should know what it is, so there's a plan that can be followed.
Well, it's gonna be a site plan, it's two, right, it's converted to a two-family unit. Or a waiver of a site plan, I mean, it's gonna invoke the board's right to see a site plan.
Site plan wasn't required.
Yeah, technically, for a two-family house, site plan is not required on the municipal land use law, but I have to add that we are here for a use variance. Applicant's burden of proof on a use variance is very significant, perhaps the most significant of any case that comes before the zoning board. If the board wants to see site plan details, the board will be able to require those in order to decide whether to grant the variance, not as a site plan, but as a D variance. So that's your call. It's also their burden, and beautifying something is done best when there's a few pictures to describe how beautiful something's going to be. So I'll turn to their architect and Mr. Steck to tell us all the great special benefits that are good, special reasons that are going to occur. And I continue to say, I think we better go on to the next witness.
And maybe my questions really end up going to Mr. Fox, because you talked about a lighting plan that was gonna bring it in compliance. I don't know if he has that tonight or what you meant by that. And you also said you're gonna reduce the coverage to be in compliance. And I don't know if that's in compliance with the coverage or compliance with what's appropriate for a two-family residence. And I'm assuming Mr. Fox is gonna present something on that.
Yes, he will.
Those were the questions.
I agree with Paul. We do not have a revised variance plan. At least I don't know.
I'd like to see a report from the historical commission also.
There is a review
It-
and it recommends
is
some
there-
things.
I didn't see
Not
it.
our packet.
I didn't see it.
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Well, I'd like to see the detail.
all he asked for were two windows to be changed on the side of the building. The one that was, has the board up. So all it was going to be is taking those windows out and putting siding on that wall. That was the extent of his request to us that night. Am I correct?
Except for the
Paint the
color
Paint the door,
painting.
the front door with
That
Williamsburg color.
that all the paint needed to be from the historic collection. So what was asked of us was very minor. It was just the side of the building window. At that point, the shutter wasn't hanging.
like
At
it
that
needs
point,
more
the front porch wasn't hanging, broken. It was different then.
Okay, let's move on.
Mr. Fox, please, I guess. Mr. Fox, please come forward and raise your right hand. Do you swear?
Just a minute, Mr. Collins.
Fox, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address. The business address is sufficient.
Paul Fox with Acker Associates, 13 Demont Place in Far Hills.
Board recognizes and accepts all Fox's qualifications as a professional engineer. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Mr. Fox, was your firm retained by the applicant in connection with this application and property?
Yes, we were.
And did your firm prepare the variance plan that was submitted to the board in connection with this application?
Yes, we did.
And since receiving Mr. Ferraro.
Excuse me one second. Can you want to sit down so you have that microphone there? You can get, because I don't think you get picked up on the microphone.
And
It's
we're gonna
very
put your
hard.
Plans on
You have
the
your mouth
screen
covered,
so
I'm
you
very
know.
sorry. But, you know, I have a hard, you know, talk a little more slowly, I'd appreciate it.
Since receiving Mr. Ferraro's and Mr. Banish's reports last week, have you had discussions with the applicant about changes to the variance plan to address the comments in those reports?
Yes, I have.
And did you prepare a revised version of that variance plan that reflects the proposed changes to the variance plan that was submitted?
Yes, I did.
And I'd like to perhaps have that marked, and I think you have you may have copies to pass out.
Yes. This is an exhibit we prepared for tonight. Showing revisions to the plan to accommodate.
It'll be A1.
It's not showing up on the screen for some reason.
Yeah. I was gonna help us.
You know.
Everyone gets the big one, easier to read. That's.
Okay, if everyone has that exhibit A1, I'd like to ask Mr. Fox to present that plan, describe what's shown on that plan.
Sure. After reviewing the comments from Mr. Banish as well as from Mr. Ferraro, we took a look at the primary goal of reducing the lot coverage, first of all, to eliminate unneeded areas of pavement and gravel. So to do that, we have shown on this plan where we would still retain the circular driveway going around the back of the building, but quite a bit of the gravel area and the pavement area that's immediately behind the building, as well as toward the rear of the property, would be removed. Additionally, a portion of the walkways along the eastern side of the building would be removed, as well as some of the pavement in front of the former drive-through. These changes allow us to reduce the lot coverage from over 50% down to 35%, which is conforming for the zone. In addition to making those changes to the existing parking and driveway, the shed that's located immediately behind the home would be eliminated in favor of putting a larger shed to the rear of the property for use by tenants for storage. Finally, the area where the former drive-through is located is proposed to be used for an outdoor patio area for use by the tenants. And there would be fencing, 6-foot board-on-board fencing on the street side, as well as on the west side of that, to provide for both privacy and screening. Now, as far as lighting, we need to prepare a lighting plan that would address these changes, because the original lighting plan was designed for the parking and driveways as they presently exist. With this plan, we would revise the lighting plan to provide only the necessary lighting for what we're showing here. With respect to the proposed landscaping, unfortunately, due to time commitments and scheduling this week, we weren't able to prepare a landscape plan. However, we would use the landscape plan previously approved for the bakery as a starting point and work with Frank on any modifications that may be necessary.
Mr. Fox, if I could ask you, with respect to the, patio area that's to be created, so the cover over that area is to remain,
That's correct.
so it's gonna be a covered patio?
Exactly. That was previously shown to be removed as part of the bakery application. We did that application, you may recall. But I think that's a fairly good use of the area in the current use, if it's proposed for two residential uses. I think that's good, having some outdoor area that's covered for use as a patio like that.
What is the current, impervious coverage on the property?
Currently, the impervious coverage is almost 53%,
And what is the permitted coverage in that zone?
45%,
You're proposing what coverage?
35%.
And why did you propose angled parking on that plan?
This prevents somebody from thinking there's two-way traffic. Cars come in one direction, exit the other direction, so it avoids confusion. One of the things that I've noticed at my home is that there's either a UPS truck or an Amazon truck there every day. And having a driveway that goes fully around avoids vehicles from having to park in front of the property, avoids vehicles backing out of the driveway. It's just a safer arrangement.
And if you had put in straight head-on parking in the area where you're proposing the parking, what effect would that have had on the side yard setback or the grass area between the parking and the property line?
The parking would have been ended up being closer to the side property line, because for that sort of arrangement, we require 42 feet of space between where the sidewalks end and where the pavement would end. So we'd have to actually push the parking area closer to the side property line if we were to do that.
And with regard to the area where trash cans would be stored, can you point out where that will be?
So we provided a note on the plan that right now there's an existing concrete slab under the existing shed. That shed would be removed and there would be a fenced area for recycling and refuse containers in there behind the building, out of sight.
And would a garbage truck pull in to get to those, or would those cans be rolled to the street?
For residential use like this, it would be rolled to the street.
I have no further questions for this witness.
I have a question.
You mentioned a shed in the back for storage.
Yes, I can show it on this plan. So if you look where the parking is here, there's a shed proposed behind that for use by the tenants for storage.
And is that in compliance with the township's storage requirement for apartments?
I'm not familiar with those requirements, so I couldn't testify to that.
You want me to read you the requirements?
Sure.
And I may be wrong, so somebody correct me if I am, but 13-603.7 storage areas. This is in the Bedminster Code. For each apartment unit, in addition to any storage area contained inside individual dwelling units, there shall be provided for each dwelling unit 250 cubic feet of storage area in a convenient, centrally located area in the cellar, basement, or ground floor of the building where personal belongings and effects may be kept locked and separated from the belongings of other occupants.
Well, I certainly think they could provide that storage in the basement here, but it would be fairly small, and the basement in this facility, is my recollection, the one time I was there, is fairly low. So having it outside is probably more practical in this instance.
So are you asking for a variance?
not sure if
on
it'd
the
be
storage
a
area
variance or an
requirement.
engineering waiver.
or a waiver.
What section is that in, George?
13-603.7.
Two hundred fifty
In
square feet.
the, in the, heading of the land use, I think,
250 per unit,
Yeah, we only got
378.
380.
So
378.
my client has advised me that they will meet that requirement in the basement of the existing building. They just want to provide outdoor storage for things like bicycles and whatnot. That would be too difficult to carry down to the basement.
and is it a dry basement area? Does it get? That's good. Good for you.
I know this past 2 months, it seems like no basement is.
It's tough. It's tough. You find it, Paul?
No, I'm still,
Okay, so go,
I'm just,
you see 13-601?
just bear with me, I'm going through.
This is under,
I'm sorry, what is it again, George? I'm now in the 600.
so I have it as 13-603.7, storage areas.
Right, that's under the section that talks about townhouses and apartments.
Right,
The overall heading of that is townhouses and
Yes.
apartments. Right, and that's exactly what 603.7 says. I just wanted to make sure that it would apply to this.
Yeah,
and It
that-
wasn't part of a particular zone, for example.
and that's why I
Yeah.
prefaced what.
Yeah, it looks like it generally applies to apartments.
It applies as far as I can tell. Thank you.
So
Excuse me if I may, Mr. Sanchez pointed out your apartment is defined as 3 units or more. So this wouldn't be an apartment, apparently, under that requirement.
And say that again about the 3 units?
Mr. Sanchez pointed out to me that for that provision to apply, it has to be 3 units or more.
Thank you, Mr. Steck, for pointing that out. Where did you see that?
It's in the definition section.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anybody have any?
I have a question. for Mr.
Question for Mr. Fox?
Mr. Fox,
Mhm.
so if you could go over again the thought process, because it seems to be enough property behind the building to put parking versus the side yard. What was the thought process there? Because the other question I have is, that first parking space seems a little close to the front of, to this front line. So I just want to understand that a little better. I understand why you wanted to have the circular pattern, but for residential use, a lot of times parking is towards the back instead of.
Sure. Looking at this, the existing parking arrangement was mostly to park on the side. And when you look at the driveway as what we would reconfigure the driveway going around the back of the building, that represents really the minimum turning radius that you would want to have for a driveway of 25 feet. So any parking would have to be to the outside of that radius. And we would actually be pushing it closer to the adjoining residential use in the back of the property. So we felt it was better having it on the side of the property adjacent to the existing commercial use on the adjacent property.
Okay. And then Paul, Paul Ferrero, is there a setback requirement for a parking spot?
In the VN zone, it's 6 feet from the side yard.
6 feet?
Yes.
And what about from the front line?
That's what I'm looking for right now. I don't see one.
You could potentially put that 5th spot.
There was language in there about general requirements for commercial uses, but this is
Commercial. use is
obviously not a
50
commercial
feet.
use.
Usually commercial use is 50 feet setback, but I just wanted to kind of double check that.
It's for commercial in the zone at 20 feet.
20 feet. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see a standard for the parking setback.
So to that end, that first spot, could you come in on the right there? is encroaching further on the front yard setback.
Yeah.
When it could potentially be at the rear where the proposed shed is, and the shed relocated within that building envelope, so to speak, and avoid the furtherance of the encroachment in the front yard. The side yards seem to comply fine. The proposed shed may have to be relocated, maybe to the western side of the property. But you could potentially shift those spots, correct, Mr.?
Absolutely. It wouldn't make a difference.
That's exactly what I was getting at. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Steve.
Tom, I have a question, maybe you can answer. If we're looking at a variance for a different use, what standard do we use for all the bulk requirements? Do we use the standard for the use that's zoned? Or do we use?
At a minimum,
the
yes, at a minimum, you could request the bulk standards all be met. But you also can adopt new conditions that address the use variance. You're not allowed to have 2 apartments in the zone. So whatever you think is appropriate, if you were to grant it, you could consider other requirements or conditions. For example, like, I'm not sure you'd have to approve a proposed storage shed. Maybe you wouldn't approve that.
Right, so.
But they are allowed, if you were a single family house, you're allowed a shed, but there's not a single family house. So in determining whether to grant the use variance, if you grant it, you may impose additional conditions beside the bulk standards. Okay.
And here we have an application for a variance, but not a site plan, right?
That so far, this is a 2-unit apartment building. They are asserting correctly that the municipal land use law does not allow site plans to be required for duplexes or single family houses. But what I said before, I still hold to, regardless of what they say, that when you review a use variance, you are reviewing all aspects of the site, and any conditions or requirements you want to impose in granting a use variance, you could do that.
And you can do that in conjunction with a site plan approval?
It's not called a site plan. You do it now. If you were to grant the approval, you would do it now. There is a way to bifurcate site plan from use variances, but there is no site plan, as I described before. There is a variance plan.
All right.
Okay, so this plan that you now have before you tonight for the first time, which actually may need some additional revisions, is called a variance plan.
All right.
Okay.
So in other words, just to simplify things, if we were to think that there's nothing wrong with having 2 family residents there, we could have a vote and we could approve that and tell the applicant that the applicant has to come back with a site plan.
No.
The variance plan could include details about what you need to see on the property. But like Tom said, single family and 2-family dwellings are exempt from formal site plan review. So you're going to want to know that, for instance, that there's landscaping going where he tells you it's going to go. But it's not going to be the kind of a site plan you would get if this was a mixed use with a commercial use and a residential use.
So in other words, whatever the site plan that we want to have approved, we have to do now.
Don't use the word site plan. Yeah. Separate yourself from site plan, which is for.
I understand.
It's the plan for the site.
But we could.
No, I used the right word. The best word, and actually Mr. Fox used it, was his variance plan. And he called it that, I think, and he described it as that. And he said tonight that he made a change to it. And he might have to make some more changes, he said.
All right, so, but this is a zoning board hearing, so the only thing we have to work with respect to bulk standards right now is what exists in the VN zone. If we want to add conditions to make it more compliant with a residential use, we can do that here and now. But the only standard that he's working with at this point is the standards of the VN zone, correct?
Right.
So
No,
what he has-
no.
what he has in his little table in terms of
They're
the
whatever
50
you're
versus
going,
the-
they're whatever you're going to attach if you grant a use variance. And
No, that wasn't my question.
Does the zone standard, this is the question.
yeah, I already said that the bulk standard of the zone, generally speaking, apply. Okay. And they're not asking for, from what I can tell, they're not asking for any variances from the bulk standards. But very important, when you grant a use variance, you determined
Understood.
what,
But those would be all additive.
if you grant it, but it will not be on a site plan hearing.
Okay.
And it will not be a future site plan hearing. There may be a future variance hearing, which at which this continues, and which a revised variance plan may have to be brought in to your satisfaction. Doesn't sound like it's quite there yet, since the landscaping that the witness says they will do is not on a drawing.
That's why I never should have gone to law school.
Well, that's why we're waiting with great regret to hear Peter Steck, okay? About
So
why.
in other words, with all due respect to Mr. Fox, when he testifies that the coverage in the zone is 45, the permissible coverage is 45%. And that contemplates a commercial use. That percentage has no binding impact on us. And we could say, well, we want it to be 25% coverage.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. You look troubled, Rich.
I'm not sure I agree with
Don't be
it.
troubled.
Contemplates a commercial use.
Of course it does.
It
That's what
contemplates the
zone
VN
is.
zone, period.
What?
It's what we decided that was the coverage for a VN zone, whatever the uses are in the VN
Well,
zone.
but what are they?
They're either residential or they're either commercial.
Oh, you could have just residential?
Yeah, well.
Yes, he could have.
Yes, you can have just residential. We
Yeah,
established
but
that.
the
You could
thing-
have a one-family house there right now.
Oh.
Right. Just
And so whether it was a one-family house or, a 3-unit commercial building, 45% is the standard today.
Oh, I made a mistake.
That's the only qualification I'm making state. I'm really not questioning your rationale or reasoning, but
No, I don't think.
what I was trying to say was that
Steve made a
all
mistake.
we have is a
I don't
VN
think
zone
Steve-
right now.
I don't think Steve made a mistake. When someone seeks a use variance, they have to satisfy 5 of 7 of you that the special reasons exist under the affirmative criteria and that all of the negative criteria which attach to all variances are met. You might determine that a coverage lower than allowed in the zone is required for you to be satisfied that there be two-family house on this property. You might require that there be no shed. You might require that there be no portico extension. You might require that they improve the exterior appearance of the building in a way that they haven't offered to do that. That doesn't mean that you can't do that when you are considering granting a use variance for a use not permitted in the zone. And so don't bind yourself solely to the ordinance or to the bulk standards. Think in terms of whether you're satisfied after we hear all this wonderful testimony we're going to hear from the 2 more witnesses, of what the special reasons are in the affirmative criteria and how the negative criteria are being met. So stay tuned. Let's hear it.
If I could just weigh in though, the permitted lot coverage for a residential use, a detached dwelling unit is 40%. This is between 15,000 and 25,000 square feet. And a non-residential use, it'd be permitted 45%.
So there's different bulk standards depending on the use in the VN zone?
That's correct. All right, that's an important clarification. And which one is he using here? He's using the commercial standard?
He testified about the 45%. So he's
That's gonna revise his existing situation as a commercial property, but they want to change it to residential.
So the metrics that Mr. Fox outlined here, that's what I'm trying to get to. The metrics that Mr. Fox outlined here between what is required, what is existing, and what is proposed.
Well, what he's showing on his plan,
Pardon me?
what he is showing on the exhibit tonight shows 35%. So that's below the 40%.
That's proposed.
Yes.
And that's just to clarify, that's to the future right-of-way line.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
It's what, Paul?
It's to the future right-of-way line.
So
Supposed to
it's
be
a,
35.
so it's over a half an acre right now. But if you take out the right of way, it's less than a half an acre. It's 0.4 or something.
Correct.
Am I reading that right, Mr. Fox? It's 0.4 something to the right of way? Very small print, 0.4335, I think I'm reading.
Yes, that's right. Well, in the proposed condition, it'll be 0.4016.
even smaller.
Yeah,
So, Paul, you sent me that.
And when you create that fraction, it gets to 35%. You're using the lot coverage divided by the 0.43 lot,
that's correct.
or 0.4016 lot, I'm sorry.
What the proposed lot size will be.
Okay.
We're not allowed to count area within the right of way.
And again, if what Paul just said, I didn't understand that to be the case, but if the lot coverage requirements within the VN zone are different for residential uses than they are for commercial uses, are you applying the residential criteria or the existing commercial criteria?
So on this chart, we show the 45%, which is what the VN zone for commercial use is, correct?
But even at 35, we're good because if
Right.
you apply the 40, we're still not seeking a variance for lot coverage.
That's right.
Correct.
If we apply the residential standard.
That's right.
But correct me if I'm wrong, you're not looking for any bulk relief here, right?
Correct.
We can add bulk relief. That's our prerogative, right, Thomas?
You're gonna add
We
requirements.
can add bulk
Don't
requirements. I'm
think of it
sorry.
as, don't think, they're not ordinances, they're the conditions under which you would be granting a use variance. Okay, and it's not a rezoning,
Everything's on the table.
yeah.
Well, because you're the zoning board, because we're in the zoning board.
You have to be satisfied with the affirmative negative criteria. We haven't heard anything about them yet.
Anything more for Mr. Fox?
So just to reiterate,
Yeah.
it's possible to take that first parking space and move it to the back.
Yes, we could slide that row of parking spaces back further, so I don't believe we're required to be within the building setback, but I do think we're not permitted to be in front of the building itself
Right.
if this was a new application. So right now, there is parking that's, probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 feet in front of the building line. So we can easily slide that back and get that.
There's a little
into a
triangle and then there's a
conforming
bigger
condition.
triangle that.
So the reason I favor that is because it's going to be a residential situation, so we want to make it look less like a commercial situation.
Yeah, but and let me ask you, Lou, is that what our master plan says for that area? To make it look more residential?
No, not at all.
Okay,
But Tom said everything's on the.
right, no, I know, but I'm
No,
just saying,
I'm not.
and we'll get to all that.
No,
Yeah.
We hope.
I think the important.
Tonight, I hope.
The important thing to keep in mind is that the property to the west as well as the property to the north are both residential properties. And the reason that we wanted to keep the parking on the other side was to keep it adjacent to the commercial use.
And I think that's a good.
That was the goal
good
there.
plan.
I think the only other thing I wanted to point out, you may recall a few years ago, we had a site plan application for the property that included the country picnic, the former Sports People building. They have not been able to find any tenants. So that has not proceeded.
Okay.
But that's planner stuff, right? That's not you're the engineer, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just don't think Mr. Steck was aware of that just because it's something that we were involved in.
And 5 parking spaces is all that's required for 2 tenants.
That's correct.
So, and did I hear you say you're prepared to present that landscape plan to us at some point?
At some point, not tonight. Unfortunately, we just didn't have time to prepare it. Again, we did have a landscape plan prepared for the prior application on this property. So I'm sure between that plan, with myself and Mr. Banish, we can come to an agreement. on it.
And did we describe within this plan or any other plan you may be working on the proposed, I mean, I know we're talking about, are we talking about new siding or are we talking about painting? We're talking about replacing windows or are we talking about leaving them?
It's not the architect, Rich.
Oh.
We do have an architect coming up.
Architect will testify to that.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
We
Anything
don't
more
have
for
a plan for
Mr.
the
Fox? For the engineer?
Well, we have it. Yes, we do.
Yes, no.
Just going back to my letter, there were 2 comments
You have that.
that, there were actually 3 comments, but One of them was, is the parking going to be repaved? Is it going to be curbed? And if it's not going to be curbed, then a design waiver will be required.
We were not planning to curb it because this is not a commercial application where you normally see curbing. On something residential, we would prefer to not have it curved.
Will it be repaved?
That would be up to the applicant. I haven't discussed that with him. Presently, the condition of the pavement is pretty rough. And the one parking area is currently gravel. There's certainly, given the flat grade of the property, there's no issue with having gravel there. It would certainly be a clean surface.
I think pavement is required in the ordinance for parking. And I see that it's on the right-hand side, that's you're saying is gravel.
Correct.
Which is where the parking is.
That's right.
proposed. So,
And it's very difficult for people to park at an angle on
Yeah.
gravel when there's no stripes. So I think parking is really gonna be, or paving is really gonna be required. I'm not particularly troubled by the curbing, because when the cars drove off the curb, the applicant's gonna have to fix it. Or drives off the pavement, the applicant's gonna have to fix it, but I believe it should be properly paved and striped.
I will leave it to the board.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Sure.
I think we should do that. And then we'll start with your next, witness.
Great.
I didn't know.
after,
After,
let
okay.
Paul come back up and
Okay.
if there's any
Will do.
questions or comments.
All right,
That is.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna open it up to the public for, Mr. Fox's testimony. If you see anybody, Janine.
Okay, again, still, there are some of you that are on, it says iPhone or just a phone number. You can either raise your hand, you can do star nine on your phone. You can just unmute yourself and let us know that you have a question if it is for Mr. Fox. Does anyone have a question? Say the answers.
Okay, then I will close it to the public for Mr. Fox.
Thank you.
Also, we will have no new testimony until 10 o'clock, okay, we will. Can't go this long night anymore. Okay, next,
Okay, I'd like to call Mr. Joseph Marchese.
sure.
Joe, please raise your right hand. Do you swear from to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes,
And please state your name, spell your last name, and give us at least a business address.
Joseph Marchese, Marchese. Business address is P O Box, okay?
Yeah.
P O Box 184, Kenville, New Jersey, 07847.
Thank you, Joseph, and I don't believe you've been qualified to testify before this board, so some minimal qualifications would be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Marchese, what is your profession?
I am an architect.
Would you please summarize for the board your professional qualifications?
Yes. I'm an architect. I have a practice in Morris County, New Jersey. I graduated from New Jersey Institute of Technology and with a Bachelor of Architecture in 1993. I passed my registration exam in 2000, and I've opened my practice, my sole practice in 2002. My license is in current good standing.
Thank you, and board will accept Mr. Marchese's qualifications as a registered architect. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Mr. Marchese, were you retained by the applicant in connection with this application?
Yes,
Did you prepare the architectural plans that were submitted to the board as part of this application?
yes,
And have you reviewed the Boswell engineering report dated January 24th, 2024, prepared by Mr. Ferraro?
yes.
Would you please address, well, before you address Mr. Ferraro's comments in that report, the architectural comments in that report, she said, would you please address the question that came up regarding the siding? in connection with the last.
Oh.
witness.
Yes, I do believe that, residing would be a. Like, he will reside as part of. What's the word?
Part of this project.
Yes, yes.
Is that an owner's commitment that we're hearing?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, just got me clear.
Okay. Next, would you, referring to Mr. Ferrara's report, would you please address the architectural issues that were raised in that report? You don't have a copy. So section 3 of Mr. Ferrara's report refers to the architectural plans. And the first comment A, under architectural plan, it says, the photo renderings of the building show facade changes such as the removal of the shutters. The shutters are currently in disrepair and falling off the building. Approval from the facade changes is required from the HPC. The HPC approval notes the removal of windows and modifications to the porch railing. Does not mention removal of the shutters.
I do believe that we've talked about, this was addressed before, that the shutters are going to be refurbished and remain on the building when the other modifications are implemented.
Are you familiar with the shutters on this?
From when I went and measured the building, yes.
The second comment under architectural plan says, the architectural plans do not note which windows are to be removed. This needs to be presented to the board.
I apologize for that. These are on the right-hand side. There's a window in the first entrance leading up to the second floor, which is already boarded up from the interior and not closed in from the exterior. It is the intent for that window to be removed. There is a window above that, a double window, which is inside of a closet, which is also intended to be removed.
Now, the architectural plans that you submitted, separate apart from the renderings, the architectural plans do those show that or?
They happen. They do not show, they don't show the windows, but they show it's mostly existing, since the window on the inside of the first floor was boarded up. I did not include it on the plan itself.
So the architectural plans that you submitted, that you prepared and that we submitted, show floor plans and elevations.
Correct.
So are they shown on the floor plans, on the elevations, or both?
The windows removed are not, the windows removed are not shown. They're not on the plans themselves.
They're not shown as being removed? Or they're not?
No, well, they're
not shown at all,
they're not shown at all because
because they're to be removed.
to be removed, yes. Except for the double window in the closet, which is not on the plan, but on the elevation. But it is intended to be removed.
We have them up on the screen. Yeah, I have the elevations, yeah.
Yeah, watch put the elevations, yeah.
The east elevation, that double window.
Elevation?
Yes, the east elevation, the double window there, that's the one in the closet, which is intended to be removed. It also doesn't actually match the rest of the windows. It was probably added at a later date or something like that. So I believe it's a casement window and most of the other windows are double hung, so it's not intended to be there.
Could you just repeat that again? Which windows are being?
That double window,
Yeah.
which would be the second floor, that's a casement window,
which doesn't really match the other windows. So, and it's also inside of a closet.
Oh, it's inside a closet, so it's gonna be boarded up and removed,
Correct,
closed up.
correct.
And
So that's out. That is, so this elevation is wrong.
Just the window,
But
just the window.
just the width.
But the rendering is correct.
The yes, the rendering is correct,
yes,
showing no window, yes.
so
Mr. Marquesi, the item C under architectural plans, in Mr. Flores' report also relates to windows. It says the windows on the east rendering are inconsistent with the architectural plans. Then it showed a double window on the second floor that is not on the rendering. I think that's what we
That's
just discussed.
correct.
I have no further questions for Mr. Marquesi.
Okay, board have any questions for the
Yes,
architect?
I do.
Yes,
Um,
okay.
So, Mr. Marquesi, you're saying that the siding will be replaced or covered over? Do we know what's gonna actually happen, what materials are gonna be used? And is it part of the plan at this point? The exterior siding,
The siding can be replaced if it is, yes.
I'm sorry, could you,
Oh.
was there an answer to that question? Or was it an I don't know?
We're going to replace the siding.
replace it. Not reclad it with vinyl or something else. Replace it with new hardy board or new shiplap or new siding. It's important to us.
Okay.
You want a few minutes, gentlemen, to confer and just decide what siding you'll use?
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, why don't you,
Just, if we could just.
you can just take a
Yeah, just
sidebar.
take a-
Yeah.
Jeff, do you want to look the HPC certificate that you could show it on there so that, because I think he was asking it on that, just
Yeah.
Yeah,
as our.
And did HPC recommend?
Yes, he approved the application, presented the use Benjamin more historic palette equivalent for the front door.
That's paint.
Yeah,
Yeah,
proposed
right.
change. Yeah.
I don't think they,
Remove 2 windows and fix repair existing siding according to this. Paint exterior as existing.
And the existing siding is shiplap?
Or it's clapboard. Majority go like this.
maybe Frank knows, because you took pictures, these are pictures, is that like a clapboard?
Yeah.
On the exterior?
the current sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wood clapboard.
Yeah, to be clear, I was asked before about whether or not those were my pictures.
Yeah.
The ones with the snow were taken a couple of days last week, but the first picture in there was a Google street view picture, just so you know,
From the street.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's probably last year. I think it's
Yeah.
Okay, so, do we know what kind of siding is going to be replaced or repaired?
That's the question.
A cement fiber siding.
So you're gonna
Hardy,
replace,
hardy board type
you're
material.
gonna replace the existing siding with hardy plank, is that what you're saying?
That or a
Equivalent.
equivalent.
Okay.
And the colors are gonna remain the same as what they are. They're not changing.
I think,
As per the historic commission, I believe.
Well,
They-
that's what I'm asking.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Well, I think what is Kathy still online? Sure. Kathy, is white an approved color?
Yes, there's probably 45 choices of different colors whites that he can choose from.
Okay. Okay.
And is the kind of colonial blue or whatever we call that today without being politically incorrect? Is the colonial blue that they're showing on the trim, is that something that's consistent with the HPC?
Very often that the renderings that we get don't really show the right color, that they would have to show us the exact exact color number from the Benjamin Moore palette to be approved. So they'd have to pick one from that palette. Yeah, there's probably some that are similar to it, but they'd have to pick one from the palette.
So Kathy, you're expecting this applicant to come back to you, to the historical with colors and,
I would think that if there's any change in, other than repairing the side, the current shutter, if any, and anything else is done, they have to come before the, HPC. Anything with the, a lot of changes I see here were not approved by HPC. They would
Well,
need to go back.
that's why I was confused, Kathy, so yes, the answer is yes, they have to come back to you.
Yes, and I think when we were approving this, it was a matter of this was going to be done immediately prior to making decisions regarding what was going to be done in the future. And that was the reason why we said fix or repair. Because there was discussion, something was going to happen in the future, but this was a fix or repair until that happened.
Anything else for the architect?
Yeah,
Yes?
so the shed that you're showing on your first floor plan, that is the one that's to be removed, right? And you haven't indicated the new one on here, right?
I have not indicated the new one, but the shed that's shown is the one that's going to be removed.
Okay, and in the drive-through, or the area identified on the first floor plan as the drive-through, that hasn't been developed as any sort of outdoor space, et cetera?
Not on my-
Show it as still a driveway?
Not as my plan, but as according to the other professionals' plans, yes.
So the only thing that, I can't read it. Can you read it?
Oh, which plan you looking at, the first floor or the second floor?
Overhang over pavement. So there's no development of that area as a portico or anything like that at this point?
The old drive-through,
Yeah,
not on mine.
On the engineer's plan, there's the wood stockade fence 6 feet high in the front and on the side. That's
Yes,
the
the-
proposal.
Mr. Font.
yeah, but we don't have a landscape plan or anything like that trying to identify how it might be.
We will have that.
So what is the intention for that area at this point?
What has been presented before, I think a small,
Yeah.
Is it supposed to be another porch? Is it supposed to be a covered deck? Is it supposed to be a covered patio? What is
It's a covered portico, I believe was the testimony from Mr. Fox. It's covered portico surrounded by fencing on two sides to block views of it from the adjoining property in the street.
All right, so the rendering doesn't reflect that, and the floor plan, the architectural floor plan doesn't reflect that at this point, but that's the intent.
No, that's the intent, and the plans will be revised accordingly.
Okay,
And the fence and the shed will have to go back to the HPC.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The fence and the shed will have to go back to the HPC. Because they were not on the plans that the HPC approved.
okay.
So there, I do have a question about that. So you're gonna fence the area underneath the portico to create a living space, like a patio sort of situation.
Yes,
Under the portico right now, is it, maybe Mrs. Van Orden, is it asphalt pavement? Correct. Will that be changed to pavers or cement or anything different? That area just underneath.
We would make it conducive to a nice picnic area, so if it's needed or required, yeah, we could do that. And we're trying to make it a habitable residential exterior, so yes.
So it might be railroad ties, bluestone, something like that to kind of make it
Correct.
conducive to that kind of uses, okay.
Good question for you.
And we can make that a condition, correct, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I guess it's hard for me to tell by this plan, what's new and what's existing other than, because we don't really have an existing plan. This stairwell now, is that all existing right now? It goes by itself upstairs to the second floor like that?
yes,
Because you have the stairwell literally like 12 inches away from the door.
Is that an existing condition?
It's all, it is all, sorry, it is all existing, yes. There are no structural changes to these plans.
Right, and they had that little piece of wall sticking out there, so which is basically a dead space on the inside of that stairwell.
Yes,
Okay, and then the front door opens out into the first floor unit.
yes.
Okay.
Can we look at their rear elevation
Yeah.
first for a second? So on the side elevation, we already just identified that that double casement is out, right?
Correct.
On the rear elevation, in the only photograph we have, which was, I guess, taken by Frank's team, there's looks like 4 windows on the first floor plus a door. If I'm reading that right? One being the operable window, one being the boarded up window, one being the window at the toilet. Then there's the door, which I guess is under some kind of overhang there. And then there's a door, there's a small window to the right of that. Right? So of those 1, 2, 3, 4 windows in the door, you're only gonna have 2 windows in the door going forward, right?
That is correct. The
So the
door
boarded up window will be
gone.
gone and sided over, one way or another. And the small kind
Window
of
to the
toilet,
very far.
toilet sides window to the right, that gets boarded up too.
It's already boarded up on the inside, yes.
Well, it wasn't boarded up as of this picture. So
From the
there's a
outside.
window here that's out and there's a window here that's out.
The interior was covered, but the exterior.
Okay. All right. And describe to me what is going on in the rear of the house with respect to outdoor spaces. Is that a new deck that's proposed on the rear of the house?
Yes.
Is that an actual deck? Okay.
I think it's a deck on the one plane. Right?
It's a half of it's a deck, half of it's railroad ties and
Does that say concrete?
Yeah, it does.
All right, so where you come out the door, it looks like there's a porch with some steps, wood. I'm
yes,
Assuming,
yes.
and to the right of that is a concrete paved area.
Patio.
I'm looking at Mr. Fox's plan for that. And your plan doesn't seem to articulate the difference between what might be wood and what might be concrete.
There's 2 concrete areas on this plan.
On Mr. Fox's plan?
Yeah, this sidewalk area and then this, you're talking about this traffic shaped area.
Well, again, on the architectural plan, if you look,
Yeah, it's all starting from one.
what they're showing is a ramp and a stair
It breaks here and that.
on Mr. Fox's plan.
I agree what you said.
The ramp isn't identified, but the stair is there.
Well, this is being shown as 2 separate things on here, but on this, it's all one.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. So what is the intent? All wood or that combination of wood and some kind of concrete patio?
All wood.
All right,
Okay, the whole thing is wood.
so this is all decking,
What is that?
whether that's Trex or something else, we don't care at this point. Maybe HPC does. Right?
Right.
I think Trex might be a problem there.
As long as it has traction.
Okay.
So-
All right, but that's all new wood. Good.
And are there going to be any rules as to what the tenants can do on the decks? Are there going to be barbecue? Are they going to have gas grills? Are they going to have grills under the portico? What rules are there going to be for those areas?
Would that be fire code?
Yeah, it would be fire, and coming from the hills, I mean, they restrict us heavily on that over there, I think there's a distance. That those things have to be away from the building, if I'm not mistaken, like 10 feet, 5 feet, whatever it is. And that's a state law. Regulations, yeah.
I do have a question. First floor tenant, second floor tenant, does the patio porch in the back deck and or the patio under the portico, are they separate for each tenant? Like does upstairs get one area and the downstairs people get another area? Has that been thought through?
The plan would be, yes, that the deck outside of the back porch would be for the first floor tenants.
And the portico needs to be for the second. That's just it.
Not necessarily common, the one in the portico on the west side. All right, so they're coming out that staircase by the door by the staircase on the east side and having to go around the building to use that portico on the west side. And the covered porch at the front is exclusively the first floor apartment too.
No, I'm sorry, it's not, there's two entrances in the front.
Oh, yeah, one by the staircase, okay, yeah, all right.
And that's the only entrance to that unit, right?
Yeah.
To the second floor, and it's just this the one stair.
Yes.
Do you have relative dimensions of bedroom number 2? Well, relative dimensions on all these bedrooms. Some of them look a little small.
On the first or second floor?
Plan just says existing no work.
Existing no work on the first floor?
We were not proposing on changing any of the walls or anything, but which floor, the first or second floor?
Second floor says proposed bedrooms.
Oh, no, the first floor is the.
That's the first
is-
floor, I'm
is the
sorry.
first floor.
So is that entire second floor apartment existing to remain the whole thing?
Yes,
Okay.
on the first floor, bedroom 1 is approximately 11 by 11 or 11 and a half by 11, and bedroom number 2 is.
Were improvements
Nine.
made to that second floor apartment to make it a function as a residential apartment now?
This
It
was
existed
all,
as an
it's-
apartment.
is all existing. There are no proposed changes to the walls or anything.
Yeah, walls were existing, plumbing was existing, all we did was reconnect the cabinetry, the sinks and stuff like that, that's all we did.
And there was a gas connection for that stove?
I'm sorry?
There was a gas connection for the ranging oven?
Yes.
And there's currently a double door entering the kitchen from the stairwell, even though that one of those doors is like. If you take a wrong step, you're gonna fall down the stairs. That's existing,
Yes,
okay.
Do we know whether these have all these things that are existing have been approved at some point through our building department?
I don't know, they don't need, they don't need, once they have a CO, so it's okay, right?
They have a CO, and I would
Yeah.
assume that meant
Yeah.
the construction official was through there.
Okay,
But if you're not satisfied, grant the use variance, you can add requirement.
Anyone else on the board? Rich, are you?
the staircase on the second floor. looks very
As far as square footage for each proposed apartment too.
the first floor is 930 square feet, and the second floor is 605 square feet.
The 606 of the plan.
605.
To the second.
Mr. Marquez, going back to that double door in the stairwell,
Yes,
I just think it'd be wise to make it one door
I agree.
and not have a door open from that stair. Maybe Mr. Van Orden can tell us how that is arranged on that second floor.
It's like a French door, the one side opens, the other side doesn't. The only reason the other side would be open in case they need furniture upstairs.
Oh,
The stairwell.
So it'd be pitch shut.
so
You
it can
can't
be,
even bring a couch in. So that's why we left it as is.
So it can't be-
I believe that's why they put that double door in there to get stuff up and down.
Okay, so it'd be pin shut.
it'd be closed and
Yeah.
surrounded.
Is presently a French door, is a French door with glass or?
No, it's.
No, they're solid.
Door, but
Yeah.
there's only one handle on the side that opens up at the top of the stair where the left side is permanent unless they need to get something inside the.
So the left side is basically a fixed panel.
Correct.
Just to make sure no one's stepping off into it, like no one's stepping this.
All right, last time, your board, any more questions for the architect? All right, then we'll open it up to the public. Janine, let's hear if anyone.
I'm sorry, if you can.
Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, no, I can go up and down. We don't have that many. You can stay right where you are. So again,
I'll be
there's a
sure.
couple of people that are on phones. If any of you, there's only two actually besides Peter and Susanna. If you have a question, you can unmute yourself. You can start 9. Raise your hand.
Anybody here?
Okay. I
No?
imagine it doesn't look like anyone.
Doesn't look like it.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Madam Chair, but I have to be Columbo here for a second.
Yeah, go
One-
right ahead.
One more question.
Oh,
Did we talk about the roof? Are we replacing the roof?
No, I believe the roof is in good condition.
The roof is in good condition and doesn't need to be replaced. Okay. You have an idea about how old the roof is?
It was done 2000.
Okay, get up there.
Yeah, it is getting up there. One of the things that we would look at doing is, removing the chimney, out of converting to gas. They're direct vented, units. So the chimney is one of the things that is deteriorating.
So what is the chimney function for now? Just the flue
The oil furnace, the boiler.
in the basement? If you're gonna do that, you gotta bring that to the HPC as well.
Correct. But it is deteriorating.
Okay, looks like we are done with our architects. We're finished. Any next witness?
Yeah, so if you call Mr. Peter Steck.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name, and give us at least a business address.
Peter Steck, Steck, 80 Maplewood Avenue, Maplewood, New Jersey.
Mr. Steck, what is your profession?
I'm a licensed planner in New Jersey.
And would you please summarize for the board your professional qualifications?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers. I have been self-employed for over 20 years. Prior to that, I was the planning director for the Township of Montclair for about 10 years. And I also served with as an associate planner with two firms, Malcolm Castler Associates and Alvin Gershon Associates in Trenton, New Jersey. And I've actually, I think I've testified here before on a few occasions, and I've testified in approximately 250 municipalities in New Jersey, as well as in Superior Court and Tax Court, and been accepted as a planner in those jurisdictions. And my license is still in effect.
The board will accept Peter's qualifications as a professional planner. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Mr. Steck, were you retained by the applicant in connection with this application?
I was.
Have you been to the site and looked at the surrounding area?
Yes,
And have you reviewed the reports that we received from Mr. Ferraro and Mr. Banish?
I have.
What other information did you review in preparation for your testimony this evening?
Well, I certainly looked at the master plan and the zoning ordinance, and I was here earlier to hear the testimony of the other witnesses.
Before you get into your findings and conclusions, do you have any exhibits that you intend to refer to this evening? And if so, maybe we can have that more.
Yes, I have a 5-page exhibit that I have actually hard copies because I'm having trouble.
So that'll be, I think, A2.
And I can use the rest so that you can go in.
Or you want to?
Keep it going.
So I'll first just tell you what's on the exhibit, and then I'll refer to it as I go through my testimony.
So A2 consists, is this A2? What would we name?
A2.
A2 is a 5-page document prepared by me. It's dated February 1. And I'll just briefly describe the pages. The top half of the first page, as you know, is the zoning map where I've identified where the subject property is. Below that is a Google Earth map. It's probably about 3 years old, but I highlighted where the subject property is. The second page on the left-hand side has 2 photographs taken by me on January 27th of this year, and they accurately depict the sad state of conditions of the property. On the right-hand side is a 2020 aerial photo. It happens to be infrared, so the trees kind of disappear. The next page has additional photographs taken by me, and the upper photographs on the same date of January 27th of this year. Upper left is a perspective from near the rear yard. The rear yard is shown on the right-hand side where you can see the additional enclosure. On the lower 3 photographs, left-hand side shows the frontage of the property. The middle one is the lot, the residential lot to the west. And then, as you know, there's the crossing project, which has 2 buildings and a retail space that it's been vacant for a while. And then on the last page, I just colored, the second to last page, P4 in the upper right-hand corner. I just darkened some of the area with green that shows where the existing greenery is. And again, we're going to increase that. On the right-hand side, in red, I've indicated the big changes because we're dedicating right-of-way. The property will now be less than a ½ acre. And the front property line will be closer to the front porch simply because of the dedication that the county is requiring. And on the last page, I've just reproduced 2 sections. One, the master plan on the left-hand side and the zoning ordinance on the right. And I'll kind of just run through my testimony. So this is an older building, as you know, 1887. It's on 2 lots that have been merged. But talking to the gentleman that owns the property that wraps around the left-hand side in the rear, there were houses on each of these lots. And in fact, there was also a barn if you face the property on the left-hand side. And there was a drainage channel that came through the property that was eventually culverted, but the barn was on the other side of the drainage channel. There was this house, and then as you face it, there was also a house on the right. That house apparently was removed, and one of the problems at that time wasn't sewer service. Apparently the septic was failing and that house was demolished. 1887 is on the tax records and is already detailed. There's been a history of use of this property. The building is functionally divided into 2 units. Again, it was at one time a bank. Hasn't been a bank for many years. It was a stationery store on the bottom and a catering use on the second floor. And it did appear before the board in the past. The applicant wants to use it for a 2-family dwelling. And as we've talked this evening, the improvements have been refined. So I think the board has at least a better idea by testimony of what the plan is. The plan is to produce more greenery on the site, to dress up the portico so it's no longer a vehicle place, it's a place to sit. And there are improvements to all the facades of the building. As you know, this is in your village neighborhood commercial corridor. it's kind of at the western end and on the north side of the corridor. This is kind of the property adjacent to us is the last really commercial property. This has been vacant for commercial for a long time. As you move to the west, there is a larger property again that wraps around, which is in residential use. That's also obviously a historic home. And then you have the Bedminster Crossing, which is two newer buildings set back. There's about 4,800 square feet of retail space, somewhat illustrative of the fact that retail is a tough sell. That building happens to be, as you know, set back a little bit, and I believe the vacant space is still, the retail space is still vacant. Your master plan was updated in January of 2005, and I've pulled a quote from it. It's on the left-hand side of the 5th page of A2, and it recognized the existing conditions. The first description of the village district has a mixture of residential and non-residential uses. So it doesn't talk, at least in the master plan, that it's only a one family or commercial use, but it does characterize the area as having a mixture of use. And it's, as anybody driving down the street knows, many of the buildings are wood frame buildings that were originally residential buildings and have been converted to commercial over time. But the solid commercial area is really east of us. Also of interest in the master plan is that it recommended that when you have single family detached homes, the density is a 1/4 acre lot for each dwelling unit. So were we not to have to dedicate land to the county, we would have a 1/2 acre of land, and at least from a density point of view, we could have 2 dwelling units. So historically, there were 2 dwelling units on this property. The lots have merged. We want to put 2 dwelling units, but in one building. And again, at least from the use is not permitted. I'll talk about that in a moment, but the density is what was it closely approximated by the master plan. On the right-hand side, you have the permitted uses. And as you know, it's predominantly a retail permission. It does allow detached dwelling units. So I suppose if we completely gutted the inside and turned it into a single family house, that would be a permitted use. If we put a retail use on the first floor, that would be permitted, although it would require some kind of site plan review. Although banks are permitted as a conditional use, and there was a bank here, one of the conditions is a 1 acre minimum lot size. So we could never meet the standards for a bank. And my recollection is that the banks are not very much, wouldn't be interested in this property. And there are a few drive-in facilities that are left. Banks are pulling back on their branch facilities. 25, 30 years ago, if you asked a traffic expert to study a bank, they would only study it Friday afternoon when everyone raced there to deposit their checks. As you know, I haven't been to a bank in 2 years because you do this electronically. So this is technically a Medici case. It allows mixed uses. So I can have an apartment over a commercial. I can have technically 2 single family homes on the property.
But you can't do that.
Excuse me?
You just said there's not enough land there.
Well, with the dedication, you're right. We're just under a
Right,
1/2
so
acre.
You can't have 2 houses.
But from a point of view of density, the answer is we're very close, as I said, to what the ordinance looks for. And there were historically 2 dwellings on this property, but the lots have merged. So this is a Medici case. We're picking 2 dwelling units in a building that was designed for residential use. It's not a permitted use in the zone. Some combination of that, again, residential on the second floor would be permitted. But we would like to use this just as a 2 family house. So we have to show special reasons. There's some purposes of the municipal land use law that are advanced. We have to show peculiar suitability of the use to the property, and we have to meet the negative criteria under the enhanced burden of proof. There are several municipal land use law purposes that are advanced. And in my opinion, first of all, there's, aside from the fact that it should have been fixed up a while ago or better maintained, the answer is the applicant is seeking approval to fix up the building so it looks better. This building does not, in my opinion, is not well suited for commercial use. You have a porch in front. Retail use typically has large windows. It's inviting that you walk in. That's not the nature of this building. This building was built residential. It's got small windows. It's got a porch, so the front facade is not that apparent. It really looks like a residential building. The only thing strange about it is the drive-through on the left-hand side. And the answer is the applicant is trying to return that as if it is essentially a porch. So in my opinion, purposes A, and I'll talk about them in detail, E, G, I, and J are advanced by this application. A talks about encouraging the most appropriate use of land, and G talks about providing sufficient space in an appropriate location. This is at the end of the active part of your business district. The next property over is residential. The next property over is the Bedminster crossing, where it really doesn't relate to the front street. Part of that first building does have a commercial space, but it's set back. You have to get through it almost to the courtyard and back of that building. So I do think that residential use generically is reasonable in this area because it's not well suited for some kind of commercial use. And again, because it has a historic flavor, in my opinion, you don't want to convert this building into have a facade that's more like a retail or office facade. That would, in my opinion, destroy the flavor of this building in terms of the doors, the window pattern, and especially the front porch. Purpose E talks about encouraging appropriate population densities. We are just, because of the dedication of land, although no one's going to expand the road just on our property. So this is like a paper exchange. The county wants it and we're going to give them the land, but we do drop below a half acre, which means we're a little higher in density than the 2 units that would be permitted, a quarter acre per unit, but we're not that far off. Purpose I talks about promoting a desirable visual environment. And again, there are going to be significant changes in a residential theme. And we did talk about adding landscaping, making the portico no longer look like a drive-through portico. And finally, purpose J talks about the conservation of historic sites. And this is a use that, in my opinion, requires relatively little modifications to the facade of the building, which it keeps it in the residential flavor. And that, frankly, is the historic use of the building. So I think there were at least 5 purposes that, in my opinion, are advanced. In terms of peculiar suitability, as you know, the retail environment has collapsed to a certain degree. There are some vacancies in the area, but more importantly, specific to this property, is it's really at the end of the active part of your retail district. To the west of here, there's just one vacant retail spot in the new crossing building, and that hasn't been rented. I'm not sure why, but the answer is it's been vacant for at least a couple of years. In my opinion, the building is particularly suited because this 2-family use allows you to respect the facades of the building, to improve them, and to not have to manipulate both the inside and the outside of the building substantially in order to accommodate a commercial use. Before, when there was the catering establishment, they had the poke, sophisticated air exchange equipment on the back. You can see, it doesn't fit well in a building of this style and this age. In terms of the negative criteria, I'll repeat some of the things. We're certainly going to improve the aesthetics of it. We're lessening the impervious coverage, which is significant. There's more than sufficient parking. The RSIS standards for two-bedroom apartments only require 3 spaces. Your code may require more, but the RSIS standards, which frankly rule, only require 3 spaces. But given the nature of the busy street, County Road, Lamington, it is nice to have an oversupply of parking. So no one has to worry about where guests are going to park. And it's nice to have 2 driveways. So no one, there's a smooth traffic flow, more predictability on someone entering and exiting the property. Again, residential use is not foreign to this zone. You can build a 1-family house on this property. Although one would say it's not well suited because of the volume of traffic here. And again, many of the 1-family, we do have a historic house next door that's 1-family, but it's set back a long ways from the front of the property. But in a building like this that's up toward the street, it discourages, in my opinion, just someone building or using this as a 1-family home. As a 2-family home, I think it makes, the applicant has made the judgment, it's made economic sense, and it is going to generate some kind of purpose to renovate the building because it has a deteriorated look at the moment. So for those reasons, I think there are several public purposes that are advanced. I think the use is particularly suited given the size of the building and the fact that you don't want to manipulate it that much so that you preserve the historic character. And part of the character is the open space around it. Actually the bank, you would say, is in the wrong direction. That kind of damaged the look of the building. But in my opinion, the applicant is going in the right direction. Less traffic, more than adequate parking, more than adequate green space. In my opinion, and also because the master plan anticipated a mixed use in this area, this can be approved without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment of the zone plan and zoning ordinance.
Mr. Steck, were there any other comments in Mr. Banish's report that you want to address something from?
In his excellent report, I have to disclose that Mr. Banish and I were roommates in another world on the planet.
But were there caves? Roommate or cave mate?
But no, I think I covered the items that he wanted me to cover.
No further questions for.
More?
I do want to take, Mr. Steck, respectfully take issue with some of the things you've said. You repeated several times, this is the furthest west that we have commercial properties. Yet on the other side of the street, we have 4 or 5 properties that are commercial that go all the way up almost to the corner of 206.
That's correct, except that because of the nature of the street and not having like a urban environment with blocks, and it's hard to cross the street. So if you're, the trend is to get globally, to get residential use in downtowns, to get kind of a walking environment. Lamington is not a nice road to walk across. It's not well suited, and that's why I concentrated on the north side.
Just wanted to clarify.
No, there's a pizza place across the street. There's a bank. There was a automobile dealer a number of years ago.
One home, almost all commercial properties all the way up to 206.
Yes, but this side at this end, in my opinion, has a different character, and it radically changed, obviously, when Bedminster Crossing came in.
the property to the west, was that all one lot and this quarter acre was subdivided from a bigger lot? At some point, you said they were merged.
Our application is for two tax map lots
Yes.
that have merged as one. So if you look on the,
So was that subdivided from that larger parcel to the left that's separated by the culvert?
don't know. I would suspect not. Well, these are both, I think, in the 1800s, both of these buildings. So I'm not sure of when the lots were created, but the owner who has the property to the rear and left, I met him on site and he told me the history of the property, that there were two houses on each of there was a house on each lot, plus there was the barn on the west side at one time. And he has some history because he lives in that house and it was his parents' house. So he has some long-term personal history of the area.
So with previously, if they were two different lots, if at some point in time they were two separate lots, presumably there were two different residences or two different structures on those.
Yeah, there was a single family home on each of the lots.
Talk to me a little bit about the pedestrian goals of our zone plan and the walkability that you said is trendy, but maybe not so
Well,
trendy.
what is interesting, in your 2008 master plan, you had a map of encouraging sidewalks, and the sidewalk was on the other side of Lamington. You did get new sidewalks because of the crossing, but as I read the map, there wasn't a plan to have sidewalks in front of this property and the property next door.
But at this point in time, there's a sidewalk on the corner lot that goes all the way to this property line.
Yes.
And there's a sidewalk that starts at the crossings property and goes almost all the way to the auto body shop, I think. There might be a little strip that's missing there. So if we were truly going to make this pedestrian, we would put sidewalks on the north side of Lamington Road all along that route.
Potentially, yes, except that in your 2008 sidewalk plan, the way I read it, and I think it's pretty clear that the emphasis was on the other side of Lamington Road, not only sidewalks there, but that was kind of a walking trail. And it did not recommend that for the north side here of Lamington.
That was before that larger residential project was even conceived of.
I'm sure
On the north side of the road, which I can tell you, if we did that plan 15 years later, 16 years later, might look a little different.
Well, it's there.
If this property had a sidewalk, the only gap from Hillside Avenue to 206 would be the property to the west of his.
That's correct.
If I may, I don't mind adding sidewalk, I mean, it's conducive to residential downtown.
Bingo, we like that. That's very good. That's where I'm going, friend.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing this, because
Yeah.
It's only a small little piece in front of the house.
Hmm.
And on the other side of the road.
I do have a question about,
gets built and then the whole thing is there. So thank you. Yes, that's what we want.
So was there any, I didn't understand in your testimony that there was any acknowledgement of any negative criteria here.
I don't, well, there's less traffic, more pervious coverage. You know, the real effect of this is the right-of-way line is going to be pushed over about 10 feet, but they're not going to expand the roadway there. That makes no sense. So what this does is, you know, the negatives in theory are the front setback is being reduced more, but physically not changing. The lot now.
Not any worse than the corner lot. Right?
Correct. It's the lot area is being reduced to less than a half an acre. And again, there's a public purpose here now, given land to the county. So the focus really is on what's the negative of having two apartments here rather than an apartment over a commercial use. And in my opinion, I mean, the applicant has given his business plan because it's very difficult to, retain a tenant in a small space like this. But to me, to try to convert this into a active retail use is going to mess up the facades of the building.
In your
And
opinion, is residential use a higher and better use than retail or commercial functions?
Well, I think higher and better use is a real estate term. I'm not a real estate, but I can tell you that there seems to be an insatiable demand for residential uses now compared with commercial uses. Planners have this great colonial look. They like, apartments over stores. And that's an architectural image, but unfortunately it doesn't meet the marketplace. These commercial components are kind of a wash economically, but I represent a number of developers that again want to convert commercial space into residential space.
Well, let me not use the real estate term then. I'm going to steal your thunder, Steve. What is the best use for this property, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it is, given the fact that this is a historic building and part of the nature, the niceness of this is its setting, and it's going to be more green when this is done. It's a gentler land use. It's not going to produce as much traffic. It's going to be fixed up. And if this were in a row of wood frame buildings that all were converted to office and retail use, I wouldn't be here. But this is kind of at the end of the row. And this is not an area which I think is, again, I think it's important that it's at the end of what I would consider your active commercial area, at least on the north side of Lamington.
It might be at the end of the row, but it might be at the end of the row, but it's still in the historic district. And throughout your presentation, you kept talking about discussing how they're going to preserve the flavor of the historic district. And I'm wondering, how are the tenants going to do that? I mean, what are they going to be able to do on their front porch, or under that portico? What furniture are they going to be able to put out there that's going to be historic look that way?
But I'm not sure you control you control the inside of a building. I grant you.
We are talking very much about keeping you personally talked a tremendous amount about that this is going to keep the historic look of the town. And how do we preserve that? By turning it into residential and allowing residential people to make those choices, because you've just said you can't control the tenants.
I mean, I don't know if the tenants are going to be neat or slobs. I just don't know that, and you can't control that. But
you can't. But you can have rules, like if you live in the hills.
By putting landscaping, first of all, I think the front porch is going to stay as a porch, and I know that in some apartment buildings, they have what they call Juliet balconies that are non-functional balconies because they don't want people to put stuff out there because it looks bad. This is a functional porch. Someone could sit out here, put a chair on it, and by putting some landscaping on the portico, it becomes a private area. And I think that shields it. I would hate to, I'm not sure zoning goes so far to regulate what someone can do on a deck or a porch.
I agree, but that's why it's not zoned for residential.
Well, it could have it's zoned for residential in that this could be a one-family house, exempt from site plan approval. That's the end of it. But economically, it doesn't make sense, in my opinion. And there's a need for some housing that's not luxury. People in town have problems with securing employees. This is housing that could.
Oh, I agree with that. I'm not questioning that. I'm looking at, your presentation was all about keeping the flavor of the historic district. And I'm just wondering, okay, how is that going to be continued with tenants? That's all. I'm not talking about.
The building will be fixed up and you won't know, I mean, in my opinion, this board can't control the nature of the tenants. It can control the facades of the building and the use. And in my opinion, two-bedroom apartments here is fits within the building, given the fact that these were always separate first and second floor types of units for whatever the last 50 years. You, by landscaping, in my opinion, you can shield the private areas from the public areas. But I don't think you want to, well, you can do what you want, but to say to someone you can't put a chair out on your front porch or you can't have a grill in the back, I'm not sure if that's reasonable, considering that this is exempt from site plan approval. And it's obvious the board has a lot of power because this is a use variance that, as they say, the dimensional standards are subsumed into the use variance because you don't have standards for a two-family house in this zone. So you have a lot of discretion. But in my opinion, it ought to be reasonable.
Peter, one of the things that attracted us to the building was the front porch.
You need to come to the microphone.
Yeah, one of the things that attracted us to the building when we purchased it was the front porch, and we want to maintain the front porch to look historical. We have not repaired the railing there because we want to go through this process and restore the porch correctly. Adding the back residential areas, enclosing the back residential areas with nice shrubbery and fencing will allow the tenants to live their lives as they want to, but I have no problem trying to move their exterior access to the back instead of on the front where the bystanders and the townspeople will see it when they come into town. And I think that's a conducive use that will allow the historical preservation of that building. Commercial use would be even worse.
I'd like to make an observation. That front porch is probably not of a depth that would make it seem like an outdoor recreation area. You'll see people put things like rocking chairs or benches or things like that that are accoutrements you see on a front porch. But I think, like we heard, if you build the space in the back for people to go use as that outdoor area, that's where they're going to go. That's where they'll have privacy. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, but the bottom apartment opens up. The bottom apartment opens right up onto that.
Right.
So if you're going to cook or grill, that's what you're not going to walk around the whole building to go do something.
Well, we've already had to deal with that with the tenant on the second floor, where we've asked them to not hang out on the front porch and leave it messy. Okay, and the big issue is there's no covered space in the back. So we want to make the conducive living out, the exterior conducive to living outdoor in the back. We're adding a lot of grass. So there's an area, the tenant upstairs has a child, he wants to play. So we want to move them into the rear of the building, and it's a big backyard.
Yeah.
And us moving the shed out of the way that was there, relocating the parking to the side, all is conducive to a rear exterior for the tenants to live. All right, we want the shed in the back so they can have bicycles because they ride bicycles downtown. That increases the flow of people downtown. All of this is to create a better exterior living. And if you look at Bedminster Crossings, they have a similar setup. In between the two buildings, there is an area for outdoor space. So that's what we would like to do.
Madam Chair, in my opinion, this is clearly a residential building. Whether it's a two-family residential building or not is ultimately for us to decide. But I don't think that I don't think the architect has completed the job in terms of articulating how this property actually flows. I don't think Mr. Fox has completed the job with respect to how the property is landscaped and how it might be enhanced. I'm still struggling, and I consider myself a visual person. I'm still struggling about, I think we're talking about making a lot of improvements, but I'm still struggling how that's articulated ultimately. And so whether it's adding a sidewalk, which I think would be a plus, whether it's moving the proposed shed, which might be a plus, and shifting some of those parking spots further off the street. But the idea of a porch close to the sidewalk is, to me, the definition of the village zone, and that works very well, but I just need more to understand how this actually functions and how it would be enhanced. We talk about a lot more green space. We talk about some of these other things that might be kind of support the zone plan, but I'm having a little trouble envisioning it, and I'm usually pretty good at that.
So you could.
What
you could
stage?
ask-
Where
You could
are
ask
we
the
here?
applicant to come back at a future hearing with a more detailed variance plan with all the details that you talked about, that they promised tonight and you've inquired about. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying you could do that. And that might help you know more information before you're deliberating and voting, which might be whatever your vote is.
I'd like to know if the applicant is resting their case.
They are done. They can- if they wanna
I
add more,
have
they can add
another
more.
thing to add if I can. Everyone is familiar with downtown with the Sims jeweler, correct?
With a what?
The Sims jewelry shop.
I can't.
Down on Village Green, there's a Sims jewelry.
No, not in Village Green, right on.
I'm sorry, not in
Lamington Road.
Village.
Right next to
Village
Delicious Heights.
Right on Lamington Road, yeah.
Down.
Right next.
Just a little
to
bit further
Delicious
west.
Heights. And you walk by it and you see how beautifully flowered it is.
Yes.
That's why we want that building.
And that has a commercial use on the,
And
as permitted in the zone.
correct.
On the first floor.
Correct, but I'm making a relationship to how the exterior would look. Okay. So that's what we would plan on doing. Add floral arrangements, add shrubbery to do that. So this is my proposal to the board. I will suggest that upon approval of residential use for 2 units, that we will pave the parking. We will do the cement fiber siding. We will do the rear decking, wood or equivalent for the exterior deck. We will have the one-way driveway, grass area for residential exterior, covered picnic area with pavers. Parking move back on the side past the home, but leaving the back area for residential living. We will have the locked storage of 250 square feet per apartment in the basement. Exterior shed for large residential living items, biking, etc. Residential garage, garbage and recycle storage area, keeping the litter contained instead of blowing around. Extensive shrubbery and exterior planning, my similarity to the Sims jeweler, and then we'll add the sides.
Well, I'd just like to pick up on what Tom said. And on what Rich said. I just want to go on the record that I'm not prepared to vote yes on this application. And the reasons that I'm not prepared to vote yes at this point have really nothing to do with the essence of whether it's a 2-family or not a 2-family. It has to do with the nature of the presentation and with the promises that are being made in the context of the specificity of the materials that have been presented tonight. And predicated upon the lack of specificity and to some extent with 1 or 2 of the witnesses, the lack of credibility, I'm not prepared to vote yes. If the applicant comes back, gives us a landscape plan, gives us a plan showing with great specificity the architectural detail, and addresses the issues that have been raised, that have been repeated by the applicant as promises, and they're on plans, then I'm prepared to review those plans and make a decision.
Are we closing statements?
If you would like to make a comment or, Tim.
Do we need to open it up for the?
Well, we should open it
You
up.
know, it'll need to open to the public for public comments.
Okay, so once we
Testimony.
open it
We'll
up to
open it
the
up first.
public. If anyone has any comments again, or do we-
Testimony or questions?
testimony or questions, you still have 2 iPhones, you can star 9, you can unmute yourself. Raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Yes, I wanted to say we are not resting our case. And I agree with the statement that was just made that the applicant needs to come back with a landscape plan and more detailed plans. And that is our intention to do that. So I don't think it would be appropriate to vote at this time. And in fact, we'd like it to be carried, so we have the opportunity to submit those.
I think that's a very good idea. I think it would be
Yeah.
very, good to clarify all the issues that were brought up, so that the board can see it. And not just visualize it in our minds as to what you're going to do. So I think that would be great. But right now, we're opening up for this witness. So let's, I think, is there anyone there?
I did not see anyone do anything any differently, but
No.
again, if you would like to comment, if unmute yourself, star 9. Let us know that you have something to say. No, not at this time.
I don't see anyone. I see no one in the audience, so we will close it to the public. Okay, does the board agree with that?
I would like-
Summary?
Make a statement. I'd like to thank Mr. Van Orden for creating a very comprehensive list on his phone there.
Yeah.
And if you could take that list and put it into the plan and give us the specifics of that, I think we'd all be very happy with that. And I agree with everything Steve said, and I could never have said it better than he did.
He's a lawyer.
I'm sure you better, come on, try anyway, come on.
If the applicant is willing, then I think that's the direction we should go.
We are.
Okay, so we should carry to a date certain and get an extension past that date. So let's try to figure out our calendar with Janine.
Well, we do
Oh,
an
and the-
application next week, so
Yeah, we can, it won't be next week.
Yeah. We can carry it to either of the ones in March,
But we need revised
The
plans.
second?
We need revised variance plans at least 10 days before the public hearing continues. So really, the applicant should tell us when the architect and Mr. Fox can be done their.
When are our meetings next month? 7th and the 14th?
correct, March 7th and 14th are the March meetings.
Detailed photos of the existing, maybe even the interior.
So revised plans, really you need them 20 days so that Frank and Paul can look at them. So you really probably looking at April.
That would be 4th or 11th.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the architect and for Mr. Fox, but I don't think they can do work in 10 days, so. You want to go to April or you guys are telling us, so when do you want to be on? With revised plans 20 days before the public hearing.
If we could just have 1 second, so I can just talk to my client about that.
Makes sense. Yep.
George. Okay, April certainly, we agree that April makes more sense than March.
Okay, the first meeting in April, that would be the first Thursday.
First Thursday in April.
April 4th or April 11th, your choice at this point.
Um,
Give me 1 second. April 4th would work for us. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Mike, you'll extend that time frame for action until the end of April.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, and so we will carry the 2475 Langston Road LLC public hearing until April 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. There'll be no further notices. That seems fine, so we're done with this case.
Very good. Thank you very
For
much.
tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, and board have any comments? Questions? No? So then we can have a motion. to adjourn.
So I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to tell you,
Oh.
maybe read that notice about the State Planning Commission plan. It sounds unbelievable, but at the last meeting of that 2 weeks ago, they claimed that they're gonna have a draft state plan.
Yeah.
by April 4th or something, that's ridiculous, that even though there is none yet, and even though all the departments of the state of New Jersey are going to supposedly comment and participate in including their comments into that plan by April. I wish them luck. I never heard of such a pipe dream, but apparently they think they can do it. I'm not so sure the DEP representative thought that they could do it, like he said so. It's a bizarre undertaking. I don't know why the goal is so rapid. And the only reason I can think of why they are doing it so rapidly is probably to try to segue it into something called A4, which is a statute draft bill to revamp the entirety of Mount Laurel implementation, eliminate COA, give COA's authority somehow to some, well, to supposedly the Department of Community Affairs is basically the governor, which I can't believe the governor really wants to have that authority, but that's what they're doing. And they're trying to say that it'll be handled by mediators appointed by the Chief Justice, which seems inconsistent with the Constitution, but that's what they're trying to do. And it's bizarre. And so get ready for the world of Mount Laurel round 4 in a very strange legislative attempt to supposedly revamp and reformed.
Are they gonna preempt, are they gonna preempt the control we have over these, our towns?
Redesign. Yes, it's very bad for municipalities. There's no doubt about it. The whole concept is to take away and limit the immunity that you obtain from the Fair Housing Act and from COA's 30 years of practice, which were created to eliminate the builder's remedy and give municipalities the option to go to an administrative agency as a safe harbor for immunization against builder's remedy lawsuit. This bill, as proposed and as revised in proposal, would actually circumvent that in a great way, short circuit the immunity, result in mediation.
Like a clean slate, right?
Ridiculous. It isn't even a clean slate. It's a ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Proposal that should be scrapped.
So a bunch of people
Should be
who aren't,
scrapped by the legislature and the governor, and they should just appoint the people to COA and let
Right.
COA exist and
Right.
deal with
and a
that.
bunch of people who didn't get elected anywhere are gonna tell you what to do in your town.
That's right.
That's right.
So wait, it's worse than that.
Beautiful.
You live in a town that got hit by a builder's remedy worse
Right.
than almost anybody. And so after the court, and they did such a crappy job of figuring out what your obligation was, that the court told you owed 819 affordable units when you actually owed 157. So that's what COA came up with for you. So after this builder remedy crap, they came up with this really bright idea where COA develops these rules. There's an administrative procedure. You don't have to pay lawyers and planners to do every single part of it. You could go through COA, and we did over and over again and got certified. It works fine until it didn't. And so instead of
And the
making
only
it
reason it
work
didn't
fine
work,
again,
the only reason it didn't work is that the final draft of the third round rules got to the table like your table with 12 people were supposed to be sitting. Only 6 people of the 12 were sitting there, and they voted 3-3 to adopt the regulations. What does that mean? They did not adopt the regulations. So
They did all the
stupid
process
state
they should have
agency
done.
didn't bother to do, and I bet some of the people that weren't there were department heads or their representatives, who one more vote would have carried the regulations that had been drafted by professionals and supported by experts and
fixed after they were thrown out twice.
to no fault of the towns, by the way, that who were effectively innocent bystanders who said, here's our plan, and we're sitting there for 6 years. So get ready for round 4 by this crazy legislative and government and executive branch idea. It is a disaster. It is not a good idea. If anybody has any juice with the state and with the legislature and with the governor, you should urge them to stop A4 and just appoint COA.
The rules are all in place.
That's
Everything
simple.
we need is already sitting there.
There
All they
you
gotta
go.
do is react.
Would a change in the governor help this?
I can't understand why anybody in the legislature or the governor would want this.
The whole thing has been about elected officials not wanting to get involved in this.
Right.
Because they didn't want to wash their hands and say, not my fault, it's COA's fault. But all of a sudden, they're making it their fault.
That's right.
In a big way.
And they don't need to, because all that is required, and I'm not being facetious, is the mere appointment of 12 people by the governor to COA and the
As long as they don't vote 6-6.
affirmation of those 12 people by the state senate. And then they adopt regulations consistent with the Fair Housing Act, which says towns are immunized as long as they file a substance certification application, which you have done historically ever since COVID.
Sounds like another sign of the apocalypse.
Yeah, it's really very weird. I think there may be a time when you'll be asked, if anybody asked to adopt a resolution urging the governor and the legislature not to do this crazy statute. And that would be wise for all 565 municipalities in New Jersey to adopt regulate a resolution like that. It's really very, very strange what's going on. And
Why don't we start with 1?
yeah, well, that's what I'm sure that Larry's on it, and I'm sure he's very, very involved in trying to prevent this from being adopted the way that it's proposed. And he's very active in that, and so I'm sure the committee is as well. But I just wanted you to know about it because I noticed that you got that notice of the State Planning Commission. So I just by chance had gone on the meeting and noticed that they were talking about adopting this or introducing the state plan by April. And I thought, that's pretty bizarre. There's no draft of the state plan that they want to adopt, but they're going to introduce it on April 4th or something like that. It doesn't seem realistic. I mean, if you look at the state plan, it is a map. Parcel base almost. It's not quite as good as the county map, but it's basically a mapping of the entirety of the state of New Jersey with planning areas 1 through 4 and with environmentally sensitive areas designated. And if the DEP is ready to tell us what those are, which they think they are.
The reason why they're saying April 4th is because it's already done.
Well, you would
It's
think so,
already done.
but it
Some
was not
30-year-old.
It was not produced or available at the
Yeah,
meeting.
of course.
It was discussed.
They're gonna roll it out
And the
in one
DEP
day.
even said, I don't think I can get
It's
all.
probably
my-"
been 5 years in the making
Typical.
by a group of 30-year-old millennials who have a better idea.
I don't know, but all I can say is it's chaos. You live in a state that's chaotic, and this proposal is chaotic.
Yep.
And it's very detrimental to municipalities. It's also extremely detrimental to sound and good planning, which should be based on a local basis with coming up from the top, not down from the top, up from the bottom, not from down from the top, so that people like you can know where uses should be allowed and where uses should not be allowed. I'm about to retire from this.
And stand on
This
its
is
own-
so
and-
bizarre. This is so
and stand
bizarre.
on its
You will-
own merit.
You will not believe when you read it. You will just say, who wrote this?
So
That's what it's like. 80 pages of chaos.
Had enough, you want more.
It can be stopped though, right?
It's gonna be enlightening.
Stopped, or do you don't think so?
I'm-
It's so cold.
I don't think it's gonna be stopped because I think the Democratic Party and the legislature thinks that this is a good idea somehow. It's not gonna produce more housing, but they think it is. And they bought the Kool-Aid from the builders plaintiffs and from
The builders,
Fair
yeah.
Share Housing Center. They have bought into the theory that towns are all bad and municipalities are all bad and that housing will only be accomplished by being forced upon
And we need to.
through zoning, when in fact zoning does not build housing. It's really complicated to build affordable housing, and it isn't zoning that's the sole impediment for that. Just the construction costs alone for housing are so high that zoning is not the sole impediment. So.
All you gotta do is look at KRE.
So
Like hearing.
be reading
Not just
about
zoning.
it. If you get asked about it, it would be best to just skip the statute, just appoint code, no, just appoint code. And let's keep immunized and keep planning.
Yeah.
And let's develop realistic formulas for what the obligation is, because one of the jobs that COA was imparted with was to create realistic economic and population projections for determinations of fair share. It must be realistic. It isn't just imaginary. We can produce it, therefore it is. It doesn't work that way. And that's what the Fair Housing Act says. And that's why it does not need to be changed. So stay tuned, but keep reading the papers and looking online. I think we'll see that some municipal entities will suggest that towns adopt the resolution. I hope if they do, and I hope you get the draft. There's also an explanation of the bill in your planner, in your NJPO planner by Jeff Serenian, who's my friend and a very good land use. He's the expert in municipal Mount Laurel housing from the municipal perspective in New Jersey, representing hundreds of the towns in New Jersey, and trying to get the legislature to focus on why the statute, the proposed bill, needs to be changed. But it's like a locomotive and it's going fast, so. It almost got introduced in the lame duck legislature of last year.
I'm sorry, I just want to say real quick, with you guys, the lease review letter that we got from Paul for the application that's next week, this was also the plan that they submitted with it, so. Don't throw it away, bring it with you next week, and everything else will be up on the website tomorrow. The next meeting.
I just wanted to say one other thing. We lost a resident this past week. She was very involved in the town in our committee, Teresa Petrus. I don't know really, I know George was on the environmental with her and Jeff was. Her funeral services are tomorrow in Branchburg between 3 and 7. If anybody's interested.
He's also a member of the Hills Village Market Master.
Yeah, that's why I say she was very involved in the committee in the
He
town.
was on the RMC.
Yeah.
For years.
And she was on the RMC. She was very involved in the town and,
He was the vice chair of the environmental commission for the storm.
yeah, so, yeah, if you're interested. We all said prayers for her and I think God heard our prayers. It was a very debilitating.
She was diagnosed with a debilitating disease, literally like maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah, in November, she was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig.
ALS, yeah.
And so, I
So
think
that's a blessing.
it is a blessing.
Well, kind of.
That's what I'm saying.
It is.
God heard our prayers because it was, yeah. So tomorrow, Branchburg, 3 to 7.
Who else would we?
Yeah, okay.
What did she say? We should keep.
A motion. Emotion. How about an emotion?
That's the other 2 seconds.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Say good night.
Good
night, Kathy. Good night, Kathy.